Good evening, everybody. I trust everybody is well and coping with our continued lockdown. Members of the public are advised the meeting will be live streamed and video recorded, and the live stream and video recording will be made publicly available on YouTube and Council's website. Nillumbik Shire Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We would also like to pay our respects to elders both past and present and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians present. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this council. We pray for guidance in our deliberations, and we ask you to grant us wisdom and sensitivity as we deal with the business of our Shire to achieve the best outcome for the people of Nillumbik. Amen. Before we get into the substantial business of council, I'd just like to talk about somebody who we've had a passing of somebody in the council. And I was deeply saddened to hear about Nita Forbes. So on the 4th of August 2020, Nita Forbes passed away. So Nita was a committed supporter of local history and was the inaugural president of the Plenty Historical Society. She also served as president from 2001 to 2009 and then became a secretary from 2010 to 2019. As well as being an active member of the Plenty Historical Society for many years, Nita was also a member of the Eltham District Historical Society and involved with the broader Yarra Plenty Heritage Group. Nita advocated on many local heritage issues, one of which was the preservation and restoration of the Old Plenty Uniting Methodist Church, which was recently relocated from its former site in the path of the Yang Road Stage 1 upgrade to Plenty Heritage Park in Memorial Drive, Plenty. Nita worked passionately to preserve the history of Plenty and was a great community person. And on behalf of Nillumbik Shire Council, I'd like to offer our condolences to Nita's family and friends. Could I now have a mover for the confirmation of minutes of the OCM held on Tuesday, the 28th of July, 2020, please? Councillor Ashton, thank you. Councillor Clark, all those in favour? And that is carried, thank you. Any disclosures of conflicts of interest, Councillor? If not, we'll get straight into the questions. Question 1 is from Matt Mann. Do councillors feel it is appropriate to use their official Facebook pages to attack each other and their constituents? No, councillors are required to act in accordance with the Councillor Code of Conduct, Councillors Good Governance Guide 2017, in addition to what is set out in the legislation, currently the Local Government Act 1989. Our next question is from John Bordeloni. Question 1. What action has council taken against residents purposely obstructing, frustrating activities on Chapel Lane? And what action has council taken to verify the sensationalised claims made by residents, community groups in the social media and print media medium regarding Chapel Lane? Council is not aware of any physical actions by neighbours to 265 or 130 Chapel Lane to hinder truck arrivals or departures. More broadly, upon receipt of complaints about earthworks in Chapel Lane being undertaken without planning permission, where planning permission is required, councils follow the process it follows with all investigations of complaints of this nature. Specifically, council's been undertaking its own review of existing and proposed activities and impacts to infrastructure and the environment, inclusive of on-site meetings to discuss the activities being undertaken with site operators. Question 2, can council confirm that the landowner has been cooperative to date in providing confirmation that the use of the land is agricultural and that both the landowner and ESG have sought out, worked with and been cooperative with council to date? Council's legal advocate has on a number of occasions requested information of both the landowner and ESG to inform itself of the use and development occurring on the land. Council can confirm that responses to its letters have been received. Ben Rantrain. The Department of Transport has indicated to me that Nillumbik Council is planning on constructing footpaths along some sections of Research Warrandyte Road. Where can I find more information on how will decisions be made about where the footpaths will go and what form they'll take? Footpaths along the Research Warrandyte Road are being provided as part of the Commonwealth Government's Getting to School Safety Funding Program, which Council is delivering. The locations have been included in the program following community engagement in March 2018, resulting in a shortlist of 17 projects, including 2 on Research Warrandyte Road, from Ballias Street to Nita Drive and at the intersection with Kangaroo Ground Warrandyte Road. What extent will the community be consulted during the process? Nillumbik Shire Council undertook extensive consultation in March 2018, resulting in these 17 projects being included in the 2019 Nillumbik Shire Council Election Advocacy Statement. Bronwyn Wilson asks, do you think it is fair, and what is Council doing to protect the environment and safety of the residents in Chapel Lane, Doreen, against the dumping of dirt for commercial, not agricultural purposes? And 2, will Council immediately place a stop work order on 130 and 265 Chapel Lane? Council will be considering the matter at tonight's meeting, and action will be undertaken in accordance with the resolutions made. Michael Cruz asks Council, regarding the annual financial report 2019-20, note 5.5, why has the cost of rehabilitating Plenty and Kangaroo Ground landfill sites more than doubled to $20.5 million in the past year? The cost of rehabilitating the former Plenty and Kangaroo Ground sites in accordance with the EPA's post-closure pollution abatement noise has increased based on the actual price received to rehabilitate the landfills, following a competitive tender process and the inclusion of the 30-year aftercare costs. Previous allocations were based on estimates attained at that point in time. Question 2, regarding the annual financial report 2019-20, note 5.5, why has the landfill restoration provision been increased to $6.5 million above the estimated remaining costs to rehabilitate? The movements in the provision recorded in the annual financial statements are in compliance with the guidance material provided to the sector by local government, Victoria and the EPA. The provision captures the expected cost to rehabilitate the landfill sites and the 30-year aftercare costs. Luke Callistra, is there any way you can stop these trucks and corporate companies from putting our lives in danger and ruining our way of life here in Chapel Lane? Council will be considering the matter at tonight's meeting, and action will be undertaken in accordance with the resolutions made tonight. Jeremy Loftus-Hills, the agreed accounting definition of asset renewal is expenditure on or replacing existing assets to the original capability divided by the amount of depreciation of all assets. This indicator is now retired from the comparative reporting framework. Nillumbik includes it in its annual report, but redefines it in such a way that a consistent underperformance less than 40% is reported as 102.11%. Question 1, what is the renewal rate according to the previous definition without the upgrade component? And question 2, poor renewal rates indicate a growing debt for future generations. Why has Council chosen to report upgrades as renewals when in fact substantial upgrades of, for example, recreation and leisure assets increase, not decrease the renewal burden on ratepayers? The renewal rate, in accordance with the previous definition, is 39.44%. Question 2, this indicator is set by and forms part of the mandatory reporting required by Local Government Victoria and forms part of the Local Government Performance Reporting Framework. Council is calculating the indicator in compliance with the LGPRF guidelines. Cindy Allen asks Council, question 1. In light of the continuation of dumping in Chapel Lane, Doreen, should I have concerns that if my neighbour starts to dump fill, by the multi-truckloads on his property again, that council will have no mechanism with which to stop him anymore. Refer VCAT Ref P1962-2017, Sullivan versus NSC. If you have concerns regarding activities on your neighbour's property, please contact council with evidence to support the alleged breach of the planning scheme, and council officers will investigate. Each individual investigation is dependent upon the merits of the proposed use and development being undertaken, and obviously the different zones. Question 2, in relation to 103 Bannons Lane, Yarrambat, restaurant approval. For the purpose of clarity and transparency, does the planning permit approval rely on the 400 advanced olive trees and 100 advanced lemon trees as detailed by Matt Dillon at Tuesday or 18th of August 2020 future Nillumbik meeting, or the 62 olive trees and 16 lemon trees as listed as being the key feature of the agriculture component of the application? And no, the planning permit does not rely on the number of trees detailed on Tuesday, 18 August 2020 FNC meeting. The conditions of the proposed permit require a land management plan that will detail the extent of planting on the site. Sarah Hunter asked, she's got 2 questions here and they're rather long, so while people are reading those, I will give the answer. They're both regarding Chapel Lane, obviously. And council will be considering the matter tonight at tonight's meeting, and action will be undertaken in accordance with the resolutions made. Jeanette Callistra has also asked council a very, very long question, and the answer is the same, I'm afraid, Jeanette. The one, Jeanette's, Mario's question is, as it is clear that the road surface on Chapel Lane has required multiple repairs due to all the heavy trucks accessing the dump sites at 130 and 265, are ratepayers paying for these repairs? And if so, what has been the total cost to date? So the costs associated with these works have been paid for through council's operational budget. Where council's assets have been damaged, the general approach is to seek to recover any damage to council assets under the appropriate mechanisms. James Hunter asked, who is paying for the road grader which currently operates full-time in Middle Hutt Road North? ? Council does not have a grader which operates full-time on Middle Hutt Road. Council has in recent times had a road grader as required to perform repairs to Middle Hutt Road. The costs associated with these works have been funded through council's operational budget. Council is keeping a record of all inspections and necessary repairs being undertaken on Middle Hutt Road. Question 2, what mitigation has been undertaken to prevent turbid and or contaminated water from reaching the creek from the landfill site at 265 Chapel Lane? The implementation of mitigation measures is the responsibility of the respective property owner and site operators. Council and Melbourne Water are working very closely to monitor these mitigation measures to minimise potential contaminants from entering nearby water catchments. And that is the end of the questions that we have for tonight. Excuse me. So we now go on to our first advisory committee report, AC008/20. Can I have a mover for the motion, please? Councillor Brooker.
Okay, just as per the officer recommendation to accept the minutes.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for the motion, please? So I'm just having a few technical difficulties here. I'm not sure whether Councillor Ashton or Councillor Clark got his hand up first. Councillor Ashton. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. Now we're going to change the agenda on the program tonight and move straight to urgent business.
So, Mayor, I move that we suspend standing orders and move immediately to urgent business.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Rankin. Councillor. So I've just got to get up to the top here.
Point of order.
Councillor Perkins.
Is there a requirement for a procedural motion to have a seconder? I'm not sure, but that was a procedural motion, I take it.
Pardon?
Does it need a seconder or any discussion, or is it just voted on?
Procedural motion's moved and seconded, and then it can be voted on.
Right.
All those in favour? And that is carried. So,
Mayor, I seek your approval to introduce an urgent business with respect to 265 and 130 Chapel Lane, Doreen.
and just one moment, I've just got to get some documents up at the moment, councillors. So I exercise my power in accordance with clause 6.15 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2017 and admit this item into the agenda as urgent business. So do I have a councillor to move the officer's recommendation?
I wish to move, Mayor, a recommendation that council, it can come up on the screen if you like and I'll read it, that council advocate to the Minister for Planning and request a meeting at the earliest date for immediate approval and gazettal of Council's planning scheme amendment made through section 20, proposed through section 20 part 4 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. 2, to reconfirm Council's intention to apply to the Tribunal for an enforcement order in accordance with section 114 of the Planning and Environment Act at the earliest opportunity. And 3, to determine its position in relation to a section 120 interim enforcement order in the confidential session on the 25th of August, that is tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Can I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Ashton. Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, this matter has been before us now on I think 3 or 4 consecutive meetings as we work towards seeking to gain resolution. The matter seeking resolution, where we have already forwarded to the Minister 2 proposed planning scheme amendments, one a permanent planning scheme amendment to reduce substantially the amount of fill that can be added to any agricultural land, and an interim planning scheme amendment. As I've indicated to councillors privately, I'm happy to say publicly, I've had conversations with the Chief Executive Officer of the Planning Department with respect to seeking to understand what might happen both here and indeed with respect to the Minister's previous letters to us talking about recommendations he was looking to make with respect to fill on Greenwedge land. Which was a report to be completed in the end of 2019, and have been advised that that report is now merged into the later and newer studies talking about the use of agricultural land in the Green Wedge, and that indeed has been deferred pending COVID, pending other and later deliberations. So in the same conversation, I did get an initial commentary from that individual that the Minister is certainly aware of our planning scheme amendments and aware of the urgency of our concern with respect to this matter. And so the item 1 is to deal with the advocacy issue around that, simply just to continue to talk to the Minister about how quickly we might be able to progress this particular matter, which is clearly a matter of urgency to us and indeed to the broader community that is impacted by this unexpected development, particularly on 265 and the changes that have occurred in 130, which is movement of soil closer to the creek line.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Sorry, I haven't finished. The urgency of this matter is compounded in the sense that our only other 2 courses of action, one of which we're reiterating tonight and which already commenced work on, which is to seek an enforcement order under section 114, and then later on tonight to consider, now that we have received additional legal information, with respect to a further interim enforcement order on 120. I just want to highlight on both of those matters that they do not give rise to the matter of the opportunity of the council to walk in on either of these sites at 130 or 265 and demand a cessation of works. What we have determined at this point, that these sites both require a permit. It is now up to us to try and enforce the matter, given the applicant or the owner of this land has not sought a permit from us. And so in our view, the works are proceeding that they're undertaking at the moment illegally. But unfortunately, even in moving these resolutions, as I say, the first resolution under section 114 may mean some months before VCAT will actually hear this matter. Whilst we'll be seeking an urgent hearing, we are totally in the hands of VCAT. So it doesn't give us the capacity, although we have determined that it requires, these works require a permit and are acting illegally, doesn't require it, give us, if you like, police-like powers to walk in and stop and seize equipment and do anything else. Secondly, with respect to the interim enforcement order under section 120, which we will discuss later on this evening in the confidential session, I just make the point, you know, why would we deal with it confidentially? Two reasons. One is it requires, there is legal advice which we need to consider, how we're going to progress this matter, and a raft of legal issues that sit around that. And we're clearly not, it's evident even in the questions tonight, that the operators on these sites are observing our meeting. And so we're not going to outline to them what our next legal steps are in a public forum. And indeed, we need to have debated those matters in confidence due to the matter of the legal issues contained therein. I would hope at least as much of this afterwards can go onto our council website once we've made a determination, so the community is clear on the outcome of that. But even if, I just make the assumption, even if we decided later on this evening to proceed with a section 120 interim development order, it doesn't give us the right, again, to walk in and cease the work. It would certainly hopefully get a hearing within a few days and we would get some resolution. The only way you can do it overnight is for the minister to assist us with the planning scheme amendment. That is the only immediate thing that could happen tomorrow. So I commend these resolutions as the way forward, and we'll continue with the further debate later on tonight under the other matter. Thank you.
Over to you, Councillor Rankin.
It was Councillor Ashton that seconded me.
My apologies, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Ashton. Apologies to you too. You don't wish to speak? Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Perkins.
It's just a question of the officer, perhaps to Rosa if she's there.
Won't be a moment, Councillor Perkins.
Just a few moments, she's arriving.
She's on her way.
Just whilst Rosa is arriving, could I just say, the only reason I'm moving this resolution is because I'm the chair of planning. I have no greater interest in the matter than any other councillor, and I just want to commend the hard work that you have put in to try and get us to tonight.
Just a question for you, Rosa. I think Councillor Clark's finished his debate. He might be able to say some more in his right of reply. But my question for you, Rosa, is that the first dot point is that we request a meeting at the earliest possible date for the immediate approval of a planning scheme amendment made through section 20.4. Can you just for my benefit and the benefit of the gallery, just talk to what that planning scheme amendment calls for and the date that it was lodged?
Yes. So on the 17th of August, officers lodged with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning 2 planning scheme amendments. One is to seek interim planning scheme provisions in an immediate sense, and the other is to undertake a fuller planning scheme amendment process, which would be the better part of 12 to 18 months. And that would include a public exhibition period where the community can comment, and we would end up at a independent panel hearing to discuss the merits of that amendment before the minister would then consider to approve or not that particular planning scheme amendment.
So, Rosa, without the intervention of the minister, what sort of time frame could we be looking at before, a potential approval and gazettal of that amendment?
So the minister would have to authorise that amendment and allow us to begin the amendment process. Without that authorisation, we can't begin. The provisions for the time to authorise such an amendment is generally 10 days, but the department has the ability to extend that 10 days to whatever they see fit. So we haven't had a letter as yet seeking an extension to that authorisation. So we're counting down the 10 business days.
So what we've asked for in that first dot point, that is the normal, is that the normal planning scheme amendment process? That's not necessarily seeking a ministerial intervention apart from just fast tracking the approval to begin.
So one of them is the normal planning scheme amendment process that we always undertake. And the other one is that fast track amendment process. So utilising 20 Part 4, which basically means that the minister is the responsible authority. He would then consider the amendment and approve the amendment, and it would take effect immediately.
Right, thank you.
So,
Councillor Clark.
just on the same point, I just want to be absolutely clear because I don't want anybody to be confused. What we are seeking to do is ask the minister to use his 20 Part 4 powers to immediately implement a planning scheme amendment, which he could effectively do almost overnight.
That's right.
Thank you.
Councillor Booker.
Hi, just a question for Rosa as well. Councillor Clark has spoken about what we can't do about after in terms of enforcement action. I think there may be some people interested, talking about no police powers and so on to stop activity. I think maybe people might be interested to know what we can do in the event of, not for an enforcement order, in the event of a Section 120 interim enforcement order being voted on.
If council was to pursue an interim enforcement order, that is basically an application to the tribunal, and it would be substantiated by, I guess, evidence that council would need to collect to confirm the breach of a planning scheme provision. And so it's about having the appropriate evidence to present to the tribunal, and that's what we would need to do.
Yeah, I know that. What I was asking was what powers we did have to stop the activity at Chapel Lane. That was my question.
Right. So if we were to go, if we were to apply for an interim enforcement order, we would have to wait for the tribunal to issue that interim enforcement order before the works could be seized on the land. So the activities cannot stop until the tribunal decides that the interim enforcement officer is worthy and allows that application and gives that order. So just because we make an application doesn't mean they have to stop. It stops when the tribunal gives the order.
Okay, and so once the tribunal gives the order, who enforces the order? Whose responsibility is it then to enforce that order?
Well, it comes down to what the tribunal will provide in its order, but essentially the responsible authority would then be able to request that the works stop on the land. Okay,
so that's just a simple request to the party, cease this activity.
Yeah, the order's effectively coming from VCAT and the tribunal, so they would have to comply with those requirements, and we would just be there as a responsible authority to enforce, to see that they are complying by the order.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Back to councillors. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Perkins.
Thanks. I've just got a question for Blaga, our governance officer. Blaga, dot point 3 talks about we're going to go into confidential session to position, so council can determine its position in relation to the Section 120 interim enforcement order. So I understand the reason for that is so that we can debate. Different councillors have various opinions on that. Would it be seen as a breach of confidentiality if I was to declare that I'm supportive of the Section 120 interim enforcement order? There's no problem there.
As long as it's the content of what the discussion is, that
Okay,
is confidential.
Thank you.
So back to councillors wishing to comment on the motion at hand. So far we've had Councillor Clark speak. No, if no councillors have any further questions, Councillor Perkins.
Look, if no one else is going to speak on the matter, I certainly need to speak on the matter, and happy to. Look, I'm supportive of the motion. For council to determine its position in relation to the Section 120 interim enforcement order. My position, I've said it before. I moved an amendment to the extent at the last council meeting to actually initiate that interim enforcement order proceeding. I will maintain that view. There's nothing I've seen that contradicts what I believe should happen. So I'll strongly support the recommendation, and noting that my personal position in relation to the Section 120 interim enforcement order is indeed to commence that process. And that's consistent with the advice I've just received from governance. There's no problem there. Happy to support, an immediate action from the minister under Section 20 Part 4. Arguably, it is perhaps the fastest way to expedite this matter. So, council is doing a number of things. It's doing what it can do, and it's also asking the state government to do what it can do as well. So, it's a motion I'm comfortable with. I'm also comfortable with any and all councillors indicating their personal position to the Section 120 interim enforcement order, insofar as they don't divulge any legal advice that we've already received. I don't see any problem with individual councillors showing their hand on that issue, because I think that is actually what the community want. It's what they expect. They want to see council being strong and resolute in taking action. We've determined that a breach of the planning scheme has occurred. We've started to commence the enforcement order process, as the motion talks to, and also that council will determine its position in relation to an interim enforcement order. So I don't know what there is for individual councillors to be concerned about, given the advice we've just had from governance. And I would encourage any councillor to state your position. But that is a matter for individual councillors, and I understand the reluctance of some to do that. So there's no problem there. But my position, I don't think I've breached any confidentiality clause or undermined any governance process. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. No, I don't think you have this time. I'm more than happy as the ward councillor to put on record that I will be voting for this motion. Any other councillors wish to speak? Funny about that. Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to commend the hard work of the team led by Rosa, and there's a lot of work that's gone into the back of this, and I think the community are concerned that there may not be much going on, but it's important that the community understand how much work the officers are actually doing in the background. They're working night and day tirelessly to ensure that we're following the procedures correctly. I will be supporting this, and thank you, Rosa, and thank you to your team for the hard work and the diligent work that you guys are doing. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Brooker?
Yes, I was going to speak to this, but I do would say we've got the one section interim enforcement order, Section 120 of the Planning and Environment Act, that is gives us the leverage or the mechanism to take action. That is what I would be suggesting we do. Having said that, this is a, this is a serious thing. This is a kind of a high stakes game here, except it's not a game. There are potential implications, and I think just for the residents, it's not, evidence is evidence. It isn't personal concerns or personal affectations that it ought not happen. I think there's 100% agreement it ought not happen. What we're trying to do is negotiate a way to stop it, and so there, we will take the action we can take, and we're hopeful we'll prevail. But just as a matter of a contrast, I mean, council gets all sorts of arguments put to it that it should take all sorts of action on all sorts of issues all the time. And, it cannot, I think, be just saying to groups that, oh, because this is, because you're so concerned about it, we're going to fix it. I think that would not be an appropriate message. Everything is context, everything that is determined by the facts of the matter. And that is why every incident has got to be investigated really individually. And that's what's happened here. So that would just be my general comments about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooker. You summed it up very well. Any other councillors wish to speak?
Yeah.
Sorry, you're muted, Councillor Clark.
I'm not going to get a right of reply, but I was invited by Councillor Perkins to make a comment with respect to the interim enforcement.
No, I'll uninvite that comment. Sorry, I was out of order, and I'm sorry if I indicated to Councillor Clark that
you can't play the game like that, Councillor Perkins. It's all for one or one for all. Councillor Clark, please make your position known.
I just want to make the point that this is about taking action on an illegal action. We've determined a planning permit is there, and we're working under the Planning and Environment Act. Not how we feel about matters, it's about taking action against an illegal action under the Planning and Environment Act, and I'm all for taking that action under the Planning and Environment Act, and we'll support that premise, understanding the legal context in which—
Point of order.
Yeah, this was just whether you will support it, Councillor Clark.
Well,
otherwise we can—
it's never as Councillor Perkins as black and white. If it was, we would have been able to do on this about a month ago. It's not that simple, though Councillor Perkins seems to paint it so.
Thank you.
If we could at least run the clock.
We'll get to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. The second item in the confidential report, urgent business, interim enforcement order 265-130 Chapel Lane, Doreen. I also exercise my power in accordance with clause 6.15 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2017 and admit this item into the agenda as urgent business. Now that I've admitted this item, can I have a councillor move a motion to include this report to the list of matters to be moved in item 16, confidential reports, and be heard in a closed meeting? Councillor Clark.
I so move.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Brooker. Any debate? I presume we won't have any unless councillors want to have another go. If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We now move back to our original item as per the agenda, which is OCM 128-20. The update on the Local Government Act 2020 implementation, governance rules and public transparency policies. Can I have a mover for the motion, please?
I wish to make an amendment to that item, if I may, and include a third and a fourth point, please. Have we got those to come up?
Just one moment, Councillor Rankin. So this is a point 3.
So notes all written and verbal submissions received as per attachment 7 in respect to the draft governance rules and the draft public transparency policy were considered, and submitters were provided with the opportunity to be heard at the future Nillumbik Council back on the 11th of August. Considers the matters contained in the submission and committee's report during finalisation of the government's rules and public transparency policy. Point 3, the new point, adopts the governance rules, attachments 1 to 5, effective the 25th of August 2020, being today, with the following amendments to the governance rules meeting procedure. A, include the procedural motions relating to the suspension of standing orders, resumption of standing orders, consideration of confidential matters, close the meeting to members of the public and reopen the meeting to the table of motions under clause 53. And another additional point 4, adopts the public transparency policy, which is attachment 6, with an effective date of the 25th of August. And point 4 then becomes point 5, which notes the consistency of section 60.8 of the Local Government Act 2020, that upon adoption of the governance rules, the sections of Council's existing meeting procedure, Local Law 2017, that relates specifically to the conduct of Council and committee meetings, namely sections 2 to 13 inclusive, and section 14 that relates to the election of the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor, cease to apply, and the section of Council's existing policy procedure, Local Law 2017, that relates specifically to the use of Council's Common Seal, section 15, and offences and penalties for certain matters and behaviour where behaviour by meeting attendees, section 16, together with the introductory section 1, remain operative.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Can I have the seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Perkins. Back to you, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you. The reasons for the amendment is, upon reviewing the table of the procedural motions, it's been identified that these procedural motions were omitted from the draft documents prepared. The governance manager made some inquiries with the Local Government Victoria and identified that the pathway documents and guidance material produced include the 4 additional procedure motions, and therefore it would be remiss of us as a council not to include them in the adopted meeting procedure. Their inclusions to the rules is important so as that we ensure the meeting procedure follows good governance processes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to support the motion. I suppose specifically with the late change that Councillor Rankin has made, it goes to what happened at the last meeting of this council in terms of one of the agenda items where we had a councillor come over the top of a motion that was already on the table, an amendment that was being run and heard, that had been moved, had been seconded, and then we had a councillor who came in over the top with a procedural motion that didn't exist in our local law. It was an anomaly. I knew at the time it contravened the local law, as people might be able to witness by the video, but not by the audio. I was not able to raise a point of order. The chair had muted all councillors last meeting and were unable to raise any points of order. So that process went on into confidential. I was at no point arguing that it shouldn't have gone into confidential. But simply that we use the local law that pertained at the time, and the appropriate remedy at that stage would have been to accept Councillor Ashton's procedural motion, which was that the motion should now be put. That would have given every councillor the opportunity to either support or not support the amendment, and we could have gone on quite quickly and easily. But the advice of the governance manager wasn't taken by the chair, and we went down that rabbit hole. Effectively, because of you know, I talk about the failures of governance. It's really, perhaps a mistake, and I'm not. When I talk about governance, I'm not talking about the governance manager. I'm just talking about the whole process of which we're all a part of. Perhaps that advice has to be reiterated for the chair if the chair is a bit lost, or there's always an opportunity to suspend a meeting and get some further advice. But going down a process where we end up with a resolution that is not legal is not a good thing for local government to be doing. In this case, it probably doesn't have much of a material effect because we're going to get there again tonight, and we're going to repeat that motion. Hopefully, come to a resolution, but it's not necessarily a good look for a local government. I think we should try to collectively do what we can to stop such a reoccurrence. And I think the Councillor Rankin, the mover of this motion, has, I'm not sure that he's identified the issue or even been across the issue, but I certainly support his motion. In terms of the governance rules, there are some minor changes that I believe are worth noting. It talks about, and certainly when we are back in the council chamber, it suggests that the councillors should stand.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Can I hear any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Brooker.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I spoke about this 2 weeks ago. There's a lot here does rely on the councillors internalising and following the high principles that are embodied in it. I think there's been occasions where we have not met that standard, I have to say. And I think it's really incumbent on everyone to just reflect on me included, absolutely me included, to reflect on those times where you haven't met those standards and endeavour to do so, because that is what is required. Just public transparency is such a wonderful word, and it really is, it's easier to say than to actually give meaning to. But I would say it's interesting the standard used for public transparency here, or is a public interest test in relation to the Freedom of Eye information request or FOI requests. So, council can refuse to release information if they're satisfied that harm will exceed the public benefit of it being released. But really, I think transparency is about, on individual councillors as well as more the governance apparatus that sits above us. So we need both levels working on this transparency issue. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooker. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Clark.
Mayor, I also wish to support the resolution and the amendment as proposed by Councillor Rankin. It does pick up some of the usual practice points that have been the usual practice of this and prior councils and codifies them. So that's more than appropriate. I just want to bring to the attention of councillors a very important matter which is on page 12 of the report. And I think it's one of the more important sections because it's actually in some ways not dealing, it's a reverse of, if you like, the transparency provisions. And it's the sort of matters that we're going to be dealing with later on tonight, and I guess we've touched on it earlier on tonight, and that is about confidential information. Items are deemed confidential because they bring the council, as it says on the last point, potentially legal proceedings that arise out of them if the confidentiality is breached. I think the most important matter, one of the most important matters, probably one of the most important points here, is about the ability to be able to respect confidentiality of the council. If you refuse to respect confidentiality of legal advice or other matters, you bring the council in disrepute and you could potentially land it with both a poor reputation, but ostensibly massive legal risk. It's not easy to deal in confidential matters. It's not a preferred outcome for councillors to deal with confidential issues. We'd much rather everything to be in the open and everybody to be able to see everything that we're doing. But confidential means confidential, and it means so for a reason. It's not a preferred outcome, but nonetheless, it sometimes saves us from ourselves, hopefully. More importantly, builds trust with other levels of government so that everybody can share information which is legally or otherwise sensitive. So I just wanted to highlight that section. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. The next item is OCM 12920, the reconstitution of the future Nillumbik Committee from a special committee to a delegated committee under the Local Government Act 2020. Can I have a mover for the motion, please?
Happy to move the Mayor as per the papers.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Clark. Back to you, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think it's important to note here that there's a couple more items that are coming up this evening in the next 3 to 4 items specifically in regards to the Local Government Act 2020. I think it's important to actually acknowledge the work that the governance has done here. The state government set out that we've got certain components to meet within timeframes, and these are some of those components. And I think the team within the governance have done a terrific job in ensuring that we get there and deliver it on time. I will talk a little bit more as we come up to the Risk and Audit Committee in regards to those, but I think it's important to so what this item is actually talking about, it's removing the name of the Future Nillumbik Committee, and it's now being called the Delegated Committee. I'm not going to go through all the points there. The public have got the notes there. We've all read it, and it does sort of speak for itself, but I do support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Clark.
I equally support the motion. I think the nature of what we've dealt with, and I say this very quickly, over the last 4 years in creating these series of future Nillumbik committees so that we have various portfolios, has served this council well over the last 4 years, and I think is preferred to the processes they had prior to that. It involves every councillor in specific areas of the governance of the council, gives them an opportunity to chair a committee and have a role publicly. So I commend the continued use of this. I think it served us well, and other councils are also looking at similar process to that which we've instituted. Commend the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Brooker. You're muted, Councillor Brooker.
Thank you. I do think the allocation of portfolios, I do agree with Councillor Clark. I think it has served us well having the portfolio structure that we have had during this term. Gives us a area of focus, as well as some area, obviously you're going to be interested in your ward components across all portfolios. I do think we need to think about how they're allocated into the future, and there's nothing in the, because what we're doing here is just reconstituting it, which I support. But in terms of how they're allocated into the future, we haven't really got a way of resolving differences in terms of those allocations, other than the Mayor, I guess, suggesting to someone that they're a particular portfolio that's available and they should do it. But it's certainly, we'll recall back almost 12 months ago, last October, an example which wasn't actually all that consistent with the no surprises kind of policy in the transparency and decision-making guidelines that we've just adopted. And it certainly came as a complete surprise to Councillor Perkins that he'd been removed from the planning portfolio and put into social infrastructure. Look, so that was, I think, the ultimate kind of surprise, and we need a better process than for that just to happen on the night of the election of the mayor and the deputy mayor. So I ask all councillors to reflect on that and reflect on how a better process could have been achieved and their own, I think, individual roles in that decision almost, 10 months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Booker. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, Councillor Brooker makes a very good point, and whilst it's fair to say that things travelled along fairly well for the first 3 years in terms of allocation of portfolio, where at least if there was going to be a change, there was some communication between councillors. That certainly broke down somewhat at the last election for the mayor and for portfolio chairs. Now, I don't think I was the only one that was surprised by that change, where I was moved out of the planning chair portfolio to the benefit of Councillor Clark. But indeed, there were 3 councillors that had no knowledge of that, and they were, if you could believe it, Councillor Jumrak as well, and Councillor Brooker, as well as myself, had no knowledge of such a move being made. So, that really undermined, in my mind, that sort of move where the portfolio position becomes a contest between, was changes made by the bloc in power. It didn't go well for the rest of the council term, and I think that that type of decision making, that was probably where the rot set in terms of the 4-3 block, and we've seen it continue on from then. So look, I think if we're going to continue this portfolio chair program into the next council, we need to consider very, very carefully, along the lines that Councillor Brooker has said, consider very carefully the processes around which those chairs are elected, or is it just up to the mayor of the day? I would hope you'd have a new council that discusses these matters within themselves and reaches an amicable solution for all. It was that process was undertaken for the first couple of years, but unfortunately, in the last 12 months, things have broken down. So I think, hopefully the leadership group, as Councillor Clark likes to refer to himself, and Mayor Egan, hopefully the leadership group, if you're in leadership next year, we'll take these comments on board. Thank you.
Councillor Ashton.
I'd like to just say that for the record, I've had 2 portfolios. The first one was community services, because that was obviously my background and something that I was particularly interested in. And then Councillor Booker and I agreed to swap, because my other main interest is environment and trying to engage with the wider community around looking at sustainable land management practices. So for some of us, I think it's worked really well. Those of us that have really wanted to engage in those particular spaces have used it as an opportunity to work with those particular committees very closely in and outside of council. And I think it's been a really one of the best parts of the job as far as I'm concerned. It's really enabled me to work in 2 portfolios and get to know two parts of council and 2 committees really well. So I think it can work very well, perhaps not for everybody, but it did for me.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. The next item is OCM 130-20, the review of instrument of delegation to the CEO. Can I have a mover for the recommendation, please? Councillor Rankin, as per the papers. Thank you. And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Clark. Back to you, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's, am I unmuted? Yes. I think it's important to note here that this report is actually increasing the CEO's financial delegation, and it's giving him the power to be able to bring about decisions that may need to be done quickly and efficiently in the absence of council. The local law, again, this is the new Local Government Act. It's relating to that, and just bringing our council in line with many other councils as well. We had the lowest delegation in there, whereas now it's bringing that up to industry standard. I think I'll leave it there for the moment, but I do recommend the paper as per the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Clark.
To reserve my right, I have nothing to add at this stage.
Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Perkins.
Right. No, look, I won't be supporting the motion. Whilst it's arguable that it's appropriate to increase the CEO's delegation somewhat, I think from 150 for goods or 200 for the carrying out of works, straight up to 500 is a bit much for me. I don't support this motion. I would suggest 300,000 would be appropriate. That would bring us in line with Mitchell Shire with an equivalent capex budget. That's the strongest parallel I can draw. This process started a few months ago, where it was put that we needed to increase the CEO's delegations on the basis that the pandemic could bring about circumstances where council was unable to meet through illness or not physically being able to be at the chamber because of social distancing requirements or lockdowns. Tonight bears out that that's not an issue, but the issue of increasing the CEO's delegations hasn't gone away. It's actually stayed up there at $500,000. And look, I don't see the problem with councils making decisions on awarding of tenders or contracts over or under $300,000, if I got that right, or up to $300,000, where over $300,000 the council should be making those decisions in camera. I don't have an issue there. I think 500 is a bit too much. I personally, as a councillor, haven't had a problem attending meetings for my 10 years on council now. I know there are a lot of reports. The officers don't always like to, apparently, produce the number of reports they're having to produce, which includes some confidential items for tenders. Arguably, they'd have to provide a few less. The other thing is that they need to produce them anyway to be able to demonstrate that the tenders were properly considered by the officers. So I'm not going to support the motion. I'll foreshadow that the CEO delegation goes to 300,000 instead of 500,000. That still brings it up from doubles it for goods and services and an extra $100,000 for carrying out works. That appears to be the right mark. Look, I congratulate officers that this time they've come back and they've done a bit of benchmarking, and there is a bit more rigour around, this sort of notion of increasing the CEO's delegations. But to be fair as well, it's not something that was initiated by council or even necessarily pushed by the CEO. So I'm not going to support the motion and foreshadow that change to increase the delegation to 300.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Booker.
The question through governance first. Isn't it the normal practice that you have one person speaking in favour of a motion and one person against and then one person for? Isn't that how the process should work?
Sorry, Councillor Brooke, I'm not quite sure what you're meaning.
Isn't it the practice that you ought to have one person speaking in favour, then against, like alternately?
No, it's
No.
it's in the order of which the chairperson chooses.
Whoever puts their hand up.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Look, well, I would say this was a temporary, if you want my time, this was a temporary measure that was put in, as we recall, 6 months ago. And now it's going to become a permanent measure. Well, I have not, it's certainly no argument or evidence has been provided to me as to why it needed to be increased in the first place, other than the COVID example. So I actually heard a media reports yesterday that the state of emergency that is currently the trigger for our increased delegations that we have at the moment, a report saying that the Premier was saying that this state of emergency may exist for another 12 months. So if that's the case, I'm not sure how this might kind of impact us. I guess if it's passed, it would just continue on. But I think, you know, Councillor Perkins has said 300, that's double the amount we've got at the moment. That's similar to the amount that Bor, or is it Mitchell Shire have got, similar size, similar capex. That seems, you know, I would support that, I would say somewhat reluctantly, because I've not heard anybody give anything to me saying we couldn't do this because of having to go back to council, or this delayed this project because of having to go back to council. Operationally, if problems have existed, nobody has brought them to my attention and said, this is a problem we need to fix. Hasn't happened. That said, the benchmarking's been done. We're at the low end. I wouldn't necessarily think we'd have to even go up to Mitchell, but let's say, you know, we should do something in this space. That's what I would support, but I would be not in favour of, because no one's given me an argument why. Most definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Booker. Councillor Ashton.
First of all, I think we need to reassure the gallery and residents that I have not heard officers suggest that they want to write less reports and that it's less arduous for them if this delegation was to be increased. Also, I really want to reassure people that we have an exemplary process, an exhaustive process when it comes to any tenders within council. We have to. I resent, that sort of throwaway line by Councillor Perkins that, you know, we've become more laissez-faire with our tendering process. That's just not something we do. And we actually have taken pride on this council in being very competitive and looking for really good value for money for residents. And also, unlike previous councils, we actually want things to be delivered on time, in budget, and as far as possible to be designed in a really great way for this council. So whatever the people vote on this tonight, I just want to reassure people out there that we have very, very high standards with regard to our tendering process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Clark.
You made an assumption I wish to speak.
Yes, well, I'm assuming.
Anyway, so I'll just briefly touch on this. I was first elected to local government in 1981. In 1981, every Thursday we would turn up and the councillors would sign the paychecks of staff at the City of Heidelberg, now the City of Banyule. That's how we operated in those days. Now, we could have absolute scrutiny. We could turn up every Thursday and sign all the paychecks, and I think that's what Councillor Perkins wants to do. The delegations haven't changed since the period Councillor Perkins has been here. We have the very highest standards of corporate governance in this organisation. That's not to say nothing can go wrong, but we have an excellent audit committee. who have equally seen this policy and understand the detail of this policy. And it was a requirement, in fact, before it came to us tonight, that some of these policies go to the audit committee, and they're all passed unanimously by our independent auditors. Councillor Perkins, who's disappeared. So I've got no problem in supporting this. Our independent auditors have thought that's appropriate. It is modern practice. We've done the benchmarking, and that's why we came up with these numbers. At the outset, yes, and this is what started it, if you like, was to have a look at whether this has ever been changed in a decade and to get it up to date, was the circumstances around COVID. But when we first had a look at that, we weren't allowed to meet virtually. The Parliament had to come together to give us permission to be able to act virtually. We had to have the first few meetings during the COVID period in person because we couldn't do anything else. So things change. But it did cause us to be able to review the delegations appropriately, did cause us to put it in front of the audit committee, did cause us to do the benchmarking, and what we have got is the appropriate outcome. I have no hesitation in supporting the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. All those in favour of the motion?
Do I get a right of reply, Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Rankin, you do. Sorry, my mistake.
Thank you. So just in regards to Councillor Perkins' comments that I'd like to raise, transparency in the organisation from the top down is absolutely scrutinised from every point of view. Councillor Clark just highlighted that it does go through the Audit and Risk Committee, and as he's highlighted as well, that the independent members have acknowledged, received, and noted the report, and conclude that it's a very good good document. We also have a very tight procurement process that Councillor Ashton highlighted that is in place and it works extremely well. So it's going to get caught whichever way. One of my other concerns that I do have is that we employed a CEO that has got tremendous experience, that knows what needs to be done, knows how to handle and run an organisation from everybody within. He's very open and transparent. He comes back to us with information where it's relevant. So I support this motion and the recommendation by the officers because I think it's showing our trust in the CEO. And that is ultimately why we've appointed Carl into this role, because we trust him and he works with us as a collective group. So for that, I will be certainly recommending to all councillors to vote in favour for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Brooker?
There is no right of reply, sorry.
Yeah, it's a question through the chair to governance.
Yes.
Just the Nillumbik Audit and Risk Committee minutes for the 17th of August I have here. I don't believe the issue of delegation of the CEO, of financial delegation to the CEO was brought up at that committee. Clark, can you just confirm that for me?
I'll need to defer to, I can't confirm that they were brought up, Councillor Brooker. I wasn't at the last Audit and Risk Committee, but they're not in the minutes. So
they're not in the, okay. Can we confirm they're not in the increased delegation that Councillor Rankin just spoke about, that has been to the Audit and Risk Committee, is not recorded in the Audit and Risk Committee meeting minutes, the 17th of August?
The resolution should be...
I might just refer back to the CFO. I might... Vince is online, please. Was it this?
The debate's over, everybody. That really wasn't a point of order. It was just a question.
Okay.
We'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those
No.
We can take it on notice, Councillor Rankin, but we can't go and drag out minutes unless you want to sit here for half an hour.
Well, you've confused me with Councillor Rankin. That's twice now in 2 weeks. I just was looking for an answer to the question before the vote.
The
I don't
debate's
think
over.
governance is in a position to answer your question.
Question should have been before the right of reply.
You can raise a question at any time.
Happy for governance to answer the question, Councillor Brooker.
Well, governance has said they can't answer the question.
I want her to confirm that she can't answer it. That's what I'm saying.
I can confirm I wasn't at the Audit and Risk Committee, so I can't advise whether these documents were discussed, but the minutes in the agenda indicate that there was no discussion, but I wasn't there personally.
Thank you, Glover. All right. All those in favour, we'll start again. All those in favour of the motion? All those against?
Division.
All those in favour? Councillor Egan, Councillor Rankin, Councillor Ashton, Councillor Clark. All those against? Councillor de Merritt, Councillor Booker, Councillor Perkins.
Can I, as per section 49 of the Governance Rule of Meeting Procedure, have the minute taker record my opposition to the resolution?
Yes, Councillor Perkins.
Thank you.
We now move on to 13120, which is the review of instrument of delegation to members of staff. Can I have a mover for the motion, please? Councillor Rankin.
Happy to move it, Mayor, as per the papers.
And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Clark. Back to you, Councillor Rankin. Wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Rankin? You're on mute, sorry.
Sorry, Mayor. Again, this is another motion in regards to the Local Government Act 2020, which requires Council to be able to review and adopt the instrumentation of the delegation. This one refers particularly to the staff. There is no massive amendments on this at all. So I support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Clark. Any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Councillor Ashton has disappeared for a moment. Can we just do that again? All those in favour? And all those against? That is carried. Thank you, Councillor Ashton.
Councillor Ashton was against.
And I think she can't do it again. All those in
She had her
favour?
hand up.
She just came in at the moment. It was
There she
like
is.
out here in the rest of the rural area, we have internet spots and it was a bit of a lag. Our next item will be interesting, 132/20, Council's expenses policy. Can I have a mover for the motion, please?
Mayor, I'm happy to move that Council endorses the Council expenses policy as per the paper.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for the motion, please? No seconder for the motion? Councillor Ashton. Back to you, Councillor Rankin.
So this council expenses policy has been adopted again. The Local Government Act 2020, it's another item in regards to that. They've requested that we update and bring in line our councillor expenses policy. It's very open and transparent, so anybody can really see exactly what the policy is there. It makes for good governance, I think, for any councillors or people intending to run for council. It'll help you to identify your potential expense policy and itemises it fairly clearly. So I will be recommending and supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Yes, look, as we've been through this, and there's a few things that we have discussed. I'd like to say one of the things I particularly like about it, and I'm sure it exists in most policies for most councils, is the fact that there is an allowance in there for people that need either children cared for or that need some sort of assistance with caring. And I think particularly at the moment, we want more women to stand for local government, and traditionally women have been the majority of carers. That is changing, but that's still the way it is very much so in Australia. So I think having an allowance in there, if you do have young children or you do need help with carers, having dependent related expenses, I think is very important. As a councillor myself, I found it was fair. It's not exorbitant, but it means that you are not subsidising what you do, and it's easy, it's straightforward, and I think it protects the community from rorts and exploitation. And at the same time, I think it's pretty straightforward for anybody that is elected as a councillor. So yeah, I'll be supporting the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Perkins.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the procedural motion. The motion now be put.
Yes.
You call for a seconder.
Yeah, you're frozen on my screen. I'm sorry.
Oh, can you see me now? I'd like to move the procedural motion as per the governance rules that the motion now be put.
Have a seconder, please. Councillor Brooker. Councillor Perkins. Oh, we're getting a bit of lag here.
Sorry, did I get a seconder?
Councillor Brooker, but then I had
no.
Sure.
I've got a secondary, Councillor Jumerick, it looks like.
Right, Councillor Jumerick.
Yep. So I think there's been enough discussion. It's a very full agenda tonight. I think we've got an officer recommendation that seeks to resolve all the matters that have been previously discussed by council in briefings. I think it's a strong motion, and I think just to wrap things up quickly, and so we don't have to extend this matter onto the wee hours of the night. We won't get onto anything else. It's appropriate that the motion now be put, and if a majority of councillors can indicate to that extent, we won't need to deal with any other amendments being put by the usual suspects, and we can move on. So I thank you for the chair's indulgence in allowing me to move that procedural motion, but it is prescribed under our governance rules, and I'm happy to see this one come to fruition. Thank you.
The lagging stopped now. Councillor Demerit.
There's no debate allowed on the procedural motion.
Yeah, I'm trying to get hold of Blaga at the moment, and can just councillors bear with me a moment while I just reset my internet connection.
Yeah, she's just hopeless.
Right.
So I can read the relevant part of the local law. The mover has a right of obligation. The mover has the right or obligation to justify the procedural motion. Thereafter, debate is not permitted unless allowed at the discretion of the chairperson. The mover does not have the right to reply. The procedural motion cannot be amended, and it's in accordance with the table as listed.
That's okay.
Yeah, I wish just to suggest to you that you should allow, using your discretion, to allow the debate. As Councillor Perkins indicated, you do have that discretion. If not, I'll ask a question of the governance manager.
Yeah, I am using my discretion to have the debate. And Councillor Brooker, I'd appreciate it if you kept your personal comments to yourself. You were online just then. Right. Any other councillors wish to speak?
Not surprisingly, Mayor, I do wish to speak. And should the motion be successful as being put, I just give notice that at the next full council meeting, I will move the amendments as a notice of motion that I would have otherwise moved tonight. So if Councillor Perkins thinks by having this motion put, he can stifle debate in the good Labor tradition of don't be accountable, then I think he has come a cropper. There is no way you can start to not be transparent about councillor expense.
Can we have the clock started for Councillor Clark is actually going to start a debate?
And try to stick to the point.
The point is, it's a matter of open and transparent government. And the only item in the entire 3 years and 10 months that we've been sitting around this table, the Councillor Perkins wants to put it and not debate it, is the expense policy for himself. Could you ever have imagined, I could, but others might not have imagined, someone would want to hide from the public on a matter of expenses policy because he knows I want to talk about some matters here that he wants his nose in the trough for, to be able to access. You know, at the end of the day, councillors will resolve, and the next group of councillors resolve an expenses policy. It's up for them. But to even stop having the debate because you might be embarrassed by what people move without even wanting to vote against it is, I think, the most shallow, appalling move I've yet seen in his period in government. In the 10 years, not that I've ever watched the first 6, but certainly for the last 3 and a bit, he takes the cake for this one.
Keep counting, sonny boy.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any other councillors wish to speak?
I'm certainly trying to.
Any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? And that is carried. Division. All those in favour? Councillor Egan, Councillor Rankin, Councillor Merrick, Councillor Perkins, Councillor Ashton. All those against? Councillor Clark, Councillor Brooker. Thank you, councillors.
Mayor, I give notice. I'll have a notice of motion with respect to the matters which were not available. So if the community wants to watch what happens, come to the next meeting. It'll be a bit of fun.
Can we move on, Councillor Clark? You've had your time.
And so have you, Councillor Perkins.
So have you.
The next item is 13320. Status report on council resolutions for electoral term 2016 to 2020.
Happy to move that, Mayor, as per the papers.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Brooker, back to you, Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's this is a fantastic report. Again, I commend Blaga and her team in the governance department there in putting together such a fantastic report. It highlights to the community the hard work that this council has actually done. It identifies how many resolutions we've actually put up, how many of them are still open, how many of them are currently closed, and where that all sits. I think over the last 4 years, as a council group, we've done a pretty amazing job. I've asked governance to see whether there's any other numbers that sort of translate back in the last previous council, which unfortunately they don't have those sorts of stats, and it's certainly not through lack of trying. But I think that it's fair to say that the reporting within this organisation over this time has just been tremendous. And again, I'll talk a bit more about that in the Audit and Risk Committee report later on. But well done, Blaga, and well done to your team in putting together such a terrific report. And councillors, I think we've done a terrific job, and we should pat ourselves on the back for such a fantastic job in getting a number of these closed and moved on. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Councillor Rankin. I've forgotten who the seconder was. I'm sorry. Living up to Councillor Brooker's description of me, I'm sure. Councillor Brooker.
Oh, no. Just maybe I haven't forgiven you for confusing me with Councillor Rankin. Maybe that still rankles.
No, excuse me.
I would just say that Councillor Rankin's quite right. It's a really comprehensive review. If anyone would choose to read through it, of the activities of the council of the last 4 years, I wouldn't quite be so self-congratulatory, I don't think. There's certainly some high spots and some low spots. It's kind of, you know, upon reflection, there was some, I think, good decisions and some possibly that you would want to revisit. You know, would you have the opportunity? But it's a very comprehensive overview of all the resolutions of the council. So it's very, I think, beneficial and helpful to the public for that document. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Any Brooker, any other councillors wish to speak? Karma. Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, I think this is great work that the officers have done. It's good to have a record in terms of council resolutions. You know, as Councillor Brooker has indicated, there's been some good decisions. There's been some not so good, and that's par for the course for any council. I'm sure if Councillor Rankin ever makes a successive council, he'll be less inclined to reflect back on previous councils in terms of the way that he has to previous councils to this one. You know, this is my third council. I've worked very hard as a councillor on all three of those councils, as did every other councillor. It is not fair to categorise performances of previous councils, and you know, I think unless you're a member of them, councils do work hard. Individual councils work hard. Councillor Rankin, some harder than others, as we're all aware. But you know, the categorisation of previous councils in terms of making out that we're a better council, the decisions that the majority group might have made on this council are better than you know, decisions of other councils. I think that's perhaps a poor reflection on ourselves, and certainly I know that nobody in this group is really rightly able to make those reflections yet. Perhaps you might in 6 months' time. You can compare a new council with this current council, but you know, really, and until you're in it, until you're involved in it, you really don't know. So you know, if I've sort of sat here as the only returning councillor from the previous administration, there were a few that got on the council before, and I've certainly been very reluctant to be critical of the current councillors. Certainly, there were individual decisions that I didn't agree with, but I think you know, really, you'll learn into the future if you ever do get re-elected onto another council. That's not a smart move. You deal with what you've got and you make the very best decisions at the time and space, and don't worry about looking behind in terms of what other councillors did. Councillor Rankin, look forward in terms of what you can do as a councillor, what you can do better perhaps than what you currently do, and you know, there could be some other commentary around that, but I'm happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Ashton.
I think it's a good record of the democratic process at work, and as other councils have said, you know, there were highs and lows in there. We also had a lot of things come up as new councillors, particularly North East Link. That was a massive thing that occurred very shortly after we were elected. We've had other things since then. We went through the process of putting together a new Green Wedge management plan, which was a huge piece of work. With regard to criticising other councils, I don't think it's about criticising other councils. It is about looking at where we can make improvements and where we can move forward. And I think that we have done that, particularly around our digital transformation, which is a flash way of saying trying to get rid of ageing technology and actually update our computer systems. So I think with this council, one of the things we have embraced is investment in council and council systems. And I think anybody that's worked in business understands that IT can, it costs a lot of money, but at the end of the day, it can streamline business, it can improve business, it gives you much better data, you know exactly what's happening with your money, it makes reporting easier. And I think that that is one of the things I've been really proud of as a council, that we have embraced that. Staff have come to us with that issue, particularly with regards to planning. We were one of the few councils left in Victoria, I believe, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that was still using hard copy paper plans. And that is potentially one of the reasons why we had so many planning issues that were going beyond the 60 days. And some of these were obviously enough at VCAT, but not only that, it's not a good look. So I think without reflecting backwards, I would just say, yes, we've embraced a lot of good things changing. And one of the things particularly is lack of increasing equity for rural people and getting some action out here. And also, and this is partly due to the previous council, so I will acknowledge that, but we have had incredible success with regards to the Growing Suburbs funds. So really good things. This is a great document. It will be one that I do keep and hold close for a long while. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I think we've gone off the track a bit. The purpose of this document is simply the transparency as to whether or not all of the resolutions have been carried out and where they're up to. It's not a good, bad or indifferent. Everybody will have judgments about that. But I just think it's somewhat ironic that this follows on the previous decision about transparency. Because for what I was seeking to do was to be transparent. So here we have a bunch of the councillors patting themselves on the back about how transparent we are, yet trying to shut down debate on any matters which are expenses to ourselves. I've certainly been on the record as of the view that if we're going to modernise local government, you don't need a mayoral car anymore. Now we know, Councillor Perkins has told me, certainly don't want to do that.
Point of order, Mayor. Can we ask Councillor Clark to keep to the topic? He's straying off into some other debate.
Your leeway, Councillor Perkins. It's Councillor Clark. Any councillor has tonight. Go for it, Councillor Clark. I'll be having my say as well.
The exercise is about transparency here of decisions of the community. And what you just tried to do, and did successfully with the support, unfortunately, is to shut down transparency, shut down openness in government.
5-2 it was.
Make sure that people don't get to understand that there are still the three matters that I was keen to make sure were transparent was that it's no longer appropriate. No councillor officer gets paid for a councillor car anymore. Councillor Egan and I certainly didn't have our snouts in the trough trying to make sure that we use the ratepayers' money unnecessarily. Equally, I think it's important, that was the appropriate time, which councillors said privately, we needed to set the record straight on the opportunity to have alcohol at meetings. And then was the opportunity to be able to transparently and openly, by way of council resolution, which is what we're debating here, to be able to point out that no, we don't need to sit there with alcohol during the course of a council meeting or leading up to it, that we're actually, like every other workplace, not going to indulge in that practice. But no, Councillor Perkins, he still wants
point of order, Mayor.
Transparency. Can we stop the clock while it's the point of order?
What's your point of order, Councillor Perkins?
Councillor Clark has gone completely off the track. He isn't even talking about the.
What's your point of order? It's not a point of order.
Thank you, Mayor. The point is, this is about transparency, and that's what I'm talking about, the transparency of council resolutions. Now, again, in these sort of things, and whilst Councillor Perkins doesn't want to measure past performance with current performance, the only simple measure by this council about past performance of resolutions to this is, we've had 2 years where we didn't put up the rates. The previous 4 years of the council, I certainly added up. My successor managed to get to about 30-odd% increase in rates, to be one of the highest taxing councils. This council now, is the first time in Victoria's history, has got resolutions which are contained in this document tonight as the only one that in 2 years out of 4 hasn't sought to put up the rates. It's a record. It's a record to be proud of. And so there are some good things and some directions and some settings that are appropriate, and you can measure it against being the highest taxing council in the history of Victoria, which were our predecessors. You can measure the sort of support that we've given to rural councils. But this is about transparency, and that's what I just wanted to highlight. I thank the officers for the work.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
And I commend the resolution.
Any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. I'm going to ask that we take a 5-minute break. I need a glass of water and my secretary isn't here tonight, my 15-year-old, so I have to get it myself. So if staff can give us a 5-minute break and we'll be fine. Thanks, Spider. Welcome back, everybody. Our next item is OC 13420, the Diamond Creek Major Activity Centre Structure Plan. Can I have a mover for the motion, please? Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I've given Manager of Governance, and I believe all councillors have a motion which has some additions to the officer recommendation. Do you want that on the screen? And the additions are in red. So basically the officer recommendation with the changes that are in red. So not proposed to increase heights in from existing planning controls. That any potential public plaza in precinct 4 provide good access to the winter sun. To retain and provide additional canopy trees to the centre medium of any future widening of Main Hurstbridge Road, and increase the footpath width on the southern side of Main Hurstbridge Road in precinct 4 and 6 to 5 metres to accommodate future outdoor cafe zones that will benefit from the winter sun.
Can I have a seconder? Do you have a seconder? Councillor Demerit. Councillor Perkins.
Thank you. So what we learnt through this process, and there has been, look, probably not the amount of community consultation as you would normally expect, and I think that's largely due to the pandemic, the inability for officers to be able to do their planned pop-up consultation activities that they were going to do. I believe they did one in Eltham before restrictions kicked in, but they weren't able to do one in Diamond Creek. But there's a few things we learned through the process, and that is the existing controls, that arose from the draft the structure plan from 2006 has height controls that have not been realised. Right through Diamond Creek, the highest building is 2 stories. Yet the existing height controls shown on page 447 of the agenda, or figure 3 of the actual the draft plan, shows a mix of 3, 4, and 5-story buildings, right across Diamond Creek. Well, none of that's been realised. There were certainly some good improvements over time into the public realm, and particularly on public park and recreation in terms of a bridge and a footpath, of which now the Diamond Creek Regional Playground adjoins. But in terms of the built form, it was never realised. No building is greater than 2-story, and the only recent buildings you would say would be, in that time would be Mitre 10, the Police Emergency Services Complex, Coles. We're looking at 2 stories. So the 2006 plan in terms of height is unrealised, and as a consequence of that, and the broad feedback that I've received, is the community of Diamond Creek certainly don't want their activity centre to present, 5-story buildings any more than currently what exists. In fact, people have lobbied me asking that we should actually be trying to reduce the planning controls in Diamond Creek. I know that's probably not achievable, so I haven't sought to go in that direction, but I'm certainly hoping that councillors will support me in not increasing heights from the existing planning controls. And the only existing increases really do relate to that area in Precinct 4, which is around the Diamond Creek train station and Coles, and across the road at IGA. And to a lesser extent across the road at IGA, we have to note. So hopefully that covers off on the first part of the amendment. Not increase heights from the existing controls, and even the existing controls aren't widely supported in Diamond Creek, it's fair to say. There need potential public plaza in Precinct 4 to provide good access to winter sun. So if we're going to put a public plaza in the middle of Precinct 4 where currently Coles is, it'd be good if that wasn't limited by building heights around it, and that public plaza actually had some sunlight. So we'd want to see the public plaza that's open to available sun, particularly the winter sun. There's lots of canopy trees throughout the centre. They're currently in the road reserve. If we know, as we come out the railway line heading towards Hurst Bridge, they're on the left-hand side where the Diamond Creek train station development is. Well, they sit in the road reserve, and we'd like to retain those canopy trees. If the road was ever widened, we'd like those canopy trees to go into the medium strip, so we can still have a canopy throughout the activity centre and increase that over time. The footpath width on the southern side of Main Hurst Ridge Road, that's another idea that's been put to me recently as a consequence of this additional month of the draft plan being available on the internet. And I've been lobbied that the southern side of the Main Hurst Ridge Road could lend itself very well to a cafe zone. So it would, increasing the footpath from 3 metres to 5 metres, would allow outdoor tables and cafe type seating to be set up, and those tables and seating could still get the winter sun. So broadly, I'm supportive of the plan, but my major concern, and the major concern put to me, is around those increases in height. To sort of say that we have to propose increase in height, I don't think it's necessarily a requirement, given that a document that's already 16 years old or 14 years old now, none of that's been realised.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins.
Thank you.
Councillor Generic.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Perkins' first amendment. I don't believe that we need to be racing to build 5-storey buildings in and around the centre of Diamond Creek. I think there is plenty of room within the boundary of Diamond Creek to accommodate increased population, or forecast increased population. And fundamentally, I think we should be designing policies for people who live there. So let's work out ways to improve the lot of people who live there, not imaginary people who may come in the future. And again, I think that the growth forecast for Diamond Creek, while large by Nillumbik standards, is fairly moderate by state standards, and can be accommodated in other ways. The look and feel, people sort of identify with it being a country town. I think the tree planting is important, and maintaining of the trees. The planning of the shopping centres so that they can become meeting areas, and a real benefit to the lifestyle of the people living in the area. I think that it points to really needing to resolve the rail issue, the level crossings, and the foot traffic and transport issues as they go around the town. We need to continue to lobby all levels of government for that, and to again increase the livability and walkability of the whole precinct, but particularly in and around the study area, as it is called. I have had residents concerned with some of the aspects of the study area. I think overall it is quite a good plan. I think it's solidly thought out, but as I said, I don't agree with the increase in height. So supportive of it generally, but happy not to see increase in height. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turmeric. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Brooker.
Yes, look, I'm somewhat conflicted. I'll be voting against the motion, but I'd like to foreshadow if this should not be successful, I certainly won't be supporting the alternative if it comes back up. Because I certainly think what we need to be doing here is doing some consultation around this issue of heights. I mean, as a broad statement, I think we can say, if you ask the people of Diamond Creek if you want more heights, they would say no. They don't want any more heights. They don't want any more density. They don't want to take away the rural look and feel of Diamond Creek. But I think if you ask them the next question, how would you feel if those heights that can exist at the moment happened anyway? And, and they're 4 stories now. So I certainly think 5 stories are a bridge too far. I don't think anyone can really get any community support for that. But I think 4 you can. I think from some of the ones that are 3 to 4, if you ask people the question, how would you feel, if they happened anyway, and you didn't have this structure plan that does say, as Councillor Perkins said, that the objective is, being respectful to existing building materials that complement the setting and a treed landscape of predominantly local Indigenous canopy trees. That's why you've got to be really careful when you do these things, that you do it sympathetically and you get what is a good outcome, as we often kind of say. So I think we can get there if we ask the next question, and we genuinely tried to get the community to say, okay, we understand you don't want greater density, but what's worse? What's worse? Greater density without any sort of stipulations as to what that might be. And then hear what their answer is to that question. And I think that can be done through some workshops with, I think the consultants, some councillors. I just think it would be an opportunity to go into this whole area. Now, the elephant in the room is the level crossing removal. I think most certainly if you ask people, do they want more sky rail? They're saying no, they don't want a bar of sky rail. But if you ask them the next question, do you want those boom gates down an extra 8 minutes per hour during peak hour in a couple of years' time when that duplication of the rail line is completed? I think they may have a different answer. So I think that's the kind of engagement I'm really talking about, that I think we need to do, and I think we should do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooker. Councillor Clark.
Mayor, I have a couple of questions of the Director of Planning, if she's available.
Just 1 moment and we'll get her online.
Maybe just whilst we're getting her online, if I can ask, just so I understand this resolution of Councillor Perkins, on his dot point 3, he talks about the widening of Mainhurst Bridge Road. Is it the widening or duplication?
Well, either or. It's more the duplication with the medium in the centre is what.
Widening is not
widening to the extent of the road reserve.
Okay.
You've got to have room to extend it. You just can't extend it out into the road if there's no road there and there's buildings behind you. You've got to have room to move.
So
there's road reserve there.
So
Rosa, Councillor Clark has some questions for you.
So Mayor, the purpose of my questions is given the latency of when we received this, I just want to make sure that we actually understand the ramifications of what Councillor Perkins is trying on. With respect, I'll just stay with that same particular point. So to retain the additional canopy trees, to the centre median of the future widening of a main Hurstbridge Road, I don't see that, or maybe you can answer the question for me. Does the document at the moment propose the duplication or widening of main Hurstbridge Road?
Through the chair, the document at this point in time talks to a number of strategies for main Hurstbridge Road, and that includes investigating the potential footpath upgrades. It talks about strengthening the landscape character along there. It talks about enhancing the public realm with seating and shade trees and outdoor eating. It does all of those. What it does also say is that a lot of the creating this landscaped civic spine along main Hurstbridge Road is subject to, I suppose, negotiations with VicRoads or the Department of Transport in this particular instance. So if we were to go down any path, the structure plan could advocate for various changes, but it would be subject to the sign-off from various authorities.
So my readings of the document at the moment doesn't propose the duplication and widening of the road.
It only talks to the strategies or the items that I just spoke of.
I understand that. So that's sort of the first point about retaining some trees relating the strategy which isn't contained in the document. So my point to Councillor Perkins will be, if he wants to retain the trees and talk about the widening, then he needs to have included the widening or duplication in the actual strategy. Otherwise, there is nothing to be concerned about because we're not doing anything. The earlier point about potential public plaza in Precinct 4 to provide good access to winter sun, is that clear about the intent? I suspect it probably can get picked up in a broader context, in a planning scheme amendment when you start to look at setbacks. But again, I was just looking at the precinct plan. The area at that particular point is designated for, I think, 5 stories, where that would be. I just wonder again, is that clear enough about how it would proceed to a planning scheme amendment, which is the next step?
Through the chair, I think you'll find it on page 23. There's objectives there that talk to maintaining appropriate levels of solar access to existing and proposed public spaces. So it already is covered off in the structure plan.
Yeah.
And an amendment would take that one step further and start to talk to various setbacks and design guidelines to achieve that.
Yeah, that's what I thought, it was already there. But I mean, it probably doesn't hurt to make it clearer here under Precinct 4. In terms of the last dot point, which is to increase the footpath width on the southern side of main Hurstbridge Road, Precincts 4 and 6 to 3 to 5. If I just pick at Precinct 4, which is on figure 17, I'm just trying to understand exactly, and maybe I need to get Councillor Perkins to clarify for me, exactly where we want to increase the road width from 3 to 5 metres. Because it's unclear to me, if I look at that diagram, where he actually means. I mean, I'm not looking to be difficult, but if you're an officer who's got to do this, we need a resolution that actually makes sense rather than just a list of a few things sorted up at the 11th hour.
Is that the road width, or I thought he was talking about the footpath?
Yes, which footpath and over what length is the footpath?
So figure 4, through the mayor, figure 17, Precinct 4 does talk to active frontages along main Hurstbridge Road on both sides, and it talks about having a consistent street wall with 0 metre front setback. So it's just trying to maximise the footpath area or the public space area that currently exists there for various seating and so forth.
But he's specifically talking about, and maybe Councillor Perkins can help, because I'm just trying to understand actually what this resolution means. Increase the footpath on the southern side of main Hurstbridge Road in Precinct 4. So are we talking about effectively moving the curb and channel into the road to increase the footpath from 3 metres to 5 metres over the full length from Brook Street through to Wensley Street? Is that what he's actually saying?
No, beyond Wensley Street. So along the full length from the level crossing until, what's shown as Bishop Avenue there, until that roundabout. It allows for that mixed use if there's cafe. a cafe culture to be built up in Diamond Creek into the future with a wider footpath, so chairs and tables and outdoor seating can be provided on the footpath, particularly on the southern side of the road where it will benefit from the winter sun to the north. So I'm not proposing that it happens both sides of the road, just on the southern side. And look, it's aspirational, but it might take in some. You're right, moving the curb and channel, further into the road if a duplication did happen at some point in the future.
I've got figure 17, which takes me up to Wensley Street. Where are you seeing Bishop?
So I'm looking at figure 7. Look at that one. So precincts 4 and precinct 6.
What page are you on?
Page 57 is precinct 6, 57, 58. Through the chair, could I just indicate that there are strategies in the structure plan that talk to investigating the potential for footpath upgrades along and widening of Main Hurstbridge Road. So there is an action to investigate that.
Yeah, well, just provide some strength to that.
Or is it superfluous? Is what you've done already?
Well, I've put it in as a direct response to some of the lobbying and some good work that community members have done and have asked for.
Yes, but my read of that street, which I know reasonably well, is there is an indented section of parking, and to be honest, there's a fair bit of traffic that runs through there. And my concern is that the specific nature of Councillor Perkins' notation in that last dot point may just not be practicable. If the council planning scheme amendment, which is to follow, is to take 2 metres off the road for the purposes of a cafe culture, then you've got a very narrow road in a very, very busy road trying to get from Diamond Creek to Hurstbridge to the rest of the world. So that's why it's all very well to be aspirational, but it equally...
I suppose, Councillor Clark, it envisages that at some point the full width of the road reserve will be utilised, and that might well be beyond council's remit to counter that. But it's just trying to put in there. So the current road reserve goes all the way virtually to the front door of the police station and Mitre 10. The car parks that currently exist out the front of Coles, they are all within that Vic Roads road reserve. So it's just in case of that eventuality that's what we end up with, that Vic Roads decide to duplicate the road, as they've that's why they've acquired the land some time ago. It counters that to some extent.
Through the chair, you'll find that on page 31 of the strategy, and in fact in the figure 9 that follows, it talks to all of this particular action. It looks at investigating potential footpath upgrades, widening along Main Hurstbridge Road, investigating, improved infrastructure. So it's there, and it is shown clearly on figure 9 that they are strategies and objectives that exist in the current draft of the structure plan.
Thank you, Rosa. Can we get back to the...
Thank you, Rosa. Mayor, I can't support the recommendations principally because of some of these changes that Councillor Perkins wishes to make.
All of them, or just some of them? One of them?
Well, I have no particular problem in making it clear about good access to the winter sun in precinct 4, but on the others, they're either...
Councillor Clark, just for the record, has Councillor Clark started his argument? Sorry.
No, I want to know whether he would like to put something to Councillor Perkins as to whether he would like to split his amendment and break it up. If not, I'm happy to go with the flow.
Let's stick to the rules of debate. Let Councillor Clark speak to the motion.
Councillor Clark, continue with your debate.
So in answer to that, I'm happy for Councillor Perkins to split it up if he wishes, but as it currently stands, I can't support the resolution.
You don't think he has any wish to?
No.
Right,
so
keep going, Councillor Clark.
The resolution provides us doesn't provide clarification. It encourages confusion. It's not clear whether he wants to widen, duplicate, or whatever with respect to the road. I mean, I would have thought blatantly obvious. We're not likely to cut down a whole bunch of trees, but in any event, it's about the issue of that centre median and whether he intends it to be, as I said, duplicate or widen. It's already picked up some of the content within the strategy. The southern side of the path just does not make sense and is unclear.
Can you keep going with the clock? Yes, there was a delay on my clock. It had stopped, so I just wanted to alert staff.
It's unclear. And again, it's not adding to the debate. I think it's just confusing everybody along the way. It's as I said, just a list of stuff thrown in at the 11th hour without adequate consultation with officers. You know, if you're going to do this sort of stuff for a document which has been sitting around for 3 months, I would have thought we would have had a detailed conversation with officers raised along the journey. I do recognise that Councillor Perkins and Councillor Jumrick now see 5 stories as appropriate in Diamond Creek. There is 5 stories in Diamond Creek, and there is some components there of which the document suggests back to 4. But equally, as we've heard from the officers, to do what Councillor Perkins is trying to do in proposing no increase in heights and trying to grandstand in that direction, although be it trying to hang his hat on that, there are 5 levels. There are very minor changes around 5 levels through the rest of the document. But indeed, the changes that he seeks to make, to be frank, as advised by officers, are not going to be supported by the state government. They're not going to be supported by the state government department. And it's only going to come back when it's rejected out of some political posturing that there's an attempt at now. The truth of the matter is there's been many, many months of consideration of this document by the broader community. It is true to say you're never going to get a document that goes out there and says, oh, thank goodness we've got some additional height. That's never going to happen in almost any community. The reality is we have got a document put together after quite a deal of consultation with the community, with a lot of work by officers, which makes sense. And I see no need to start to play with it now, only for some political posturing, not adding to its format. And we know that if we pass Councillor Perkins' resolution, it won't be supported by the department or by the minister. And that's sort of the advice we've already had from officers.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Which makes common sense to all of the community and is properly considered.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Demerit.
Just a question to Rosa. I'm just wondering, do we have in writing that this won't be supported by the department or the minister?
Through the chair, we are required to follow planning practice notes that are set out by the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning. And in those practice notes, it makes it very clear that a structure plan should identify where growth and change will occur, preferably by precinct or by theme. It talks about identifying key opportunities and providing guidance for future development and demonstrating that the centre can accommodate projected requirements for housing, office, social and community infrastructure and the like. So the practice notes are there. Every council is required to abide by those practice notes in developing its structure plan. And the department certainly uses those structure plans as the basis for its decision making when it's considering any proposals put forward for changes to planning schemes.
So the practice notes specifically state we need to increase heights.
I just read from the planning practice notes.
That just said to accommodate future growth
and change.
I didn't hear you say anywhere that it needs height.
It won't specifically talk to height. What it does talk about is growth and change. And it talks about providing for housing choice and diversity and looking at, I suppose, accommodating the state planning policy and the urban development program. And those programs...
Height. So what Councillor Clark is saying is not necessarily true.
Well, it's either height or you seek to then diversify your the rest of the structure plan area, and that takes into account some of your existing or established residential areas and identifying opportunities for more medium density growth. Or and so I guess this structure plan seeks to provide a balanced outcome as to where should that additional growth go. Do we want to be putting it into our established residential areas, or start to separate it slightly and put it where the land could be argued as being not realised to its full potential, and further it away from your established residential areas and close to your public transport and services and facilities within the activity centre.
Thank you. Councillor Demerick, you wish to speak now? No?
I've already spoken.
Right. Councillor Booker.
Do you want me to speak again?
No,
No.
I've spoken.
Councillor Brooker has spoken, and so has Councillor Demerick, and so has Councillor Clark.
Just that people ask so many questions that, you know, you lose the track of everything. Any other councillors wish to speak? If not, we'll put it to the vote.
Hang on.
I'm just seeing if you're still awake, Councillor Perkins.
Well, you know, we're all watching this meeting very carefully, Councillor Egan.
Your time has started.
I can't. My clock. I don't see the clock.
Staff, can you please start?
There it goes. All right, we're away. Thank you. Look, you know, just wanting to reiterate, even if we were to re-endorse the previous activity centre structure plan, you know, to Rose's point, it does make for substantial change. You know, as I said, the existing planning controls call for building heights right across the centre from 3 to 5 stories. There are no 3-storey buildings. There are no 4-storey buildings. There are no 5-storey buildings. Yeah, the existing 2006 document calls for a lot of heights, of which none of it has been realised. You know, surely we can listen to the community and say enough's enough. We don't have, every time we update a structure plan, and we're updating it because we've actually implemented some of the work in the council realm from the previous structure plan. So some of the stuff that was in for council to do, we've done. We've made some traffic improvements. There's been some good work that came out of the existing activity structure plan. There'll be some good work that will come out of this one. But the height controls, there is no reason to go any higher than that what's proposed. And you know, a third of Diamond Creek, when you look at the map, is already proposed to be at 5-storey, and yet none of Diamond Creek is currently more than 2-storey. So why do we need to lift the bar even higher? I don't think we do. It does nothing to help anyone in Diamond Creek. The development community, of which Councillor Clark is potentially well aligned to, have many opportunities in Diamond Creek to realise their goals. The community also needs to have a say in terms of realising their goals in maintaining the Diamond Creek Activity Centre as, you know, something that they're proud of, something with a bit of neighbourhood character. You know, the notion of a sky rail was not at all supported or endorsed.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. We'll now put it to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Perkins? All those against? Division, all those in favour? Councillor Demerick, Councillor Ashton, Councillor Perkins, all those against? Councillor Egan, Councillor Brooker, Councillor Clark, Councillor Rankin. And for the record, the pro-development people haven't come to Diamond Creek yet. I don't know when they will. On that note, I have a family emergency. I'm going to hand the chair over to Councillor Clark. So thank you, viewers, tonight. Councillor Clark has been advised of my preferences if we have a voting issue, so he knows what I wish to do with certain things. So thank you, everybody.
Noting that you can't vote in absentia.
Thank you, Mayor. Right. Thank you, Mayor. I wish you well. I therefore call for another resolution with respect to the item of the Diamond Creek Activity Centre. Is there another resolution? There is no other resolution. I'll suggest that this matter be held over to the next meeting. The next item on the agenda is item OCM 13520, the Nillumbik Council submission to the Victoria's Parliament Environment and Planning Committee inquiry into ecosystem decline in Victoria. Is there a move a resolution? Councillor Ashton. Seconded? Councillor Rankin. Councillor Ashton.
I've got an amendment to the recommendation.
Sorry, you wish to incorporate that into what you're moving. So what do you so you're moving it with the additional words to that which is in the resolution on the papers. So your item 1 is there, and the other items then become 2, 3, and 4. You're happy with that, Councillor Rankin?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Ashton.
Look, ecosystem decline is a statewide and I would say national and international issue. When ecosystems decline, it reduces the variety of fauna and flora. It means that those things which are threatened become critically endangered, and areas disappear forever. Ecosystems are complex, interrelated environments. Some are tiny and some are spread across landscapes. We hear these spread across Nillumbik, but it might be what is under those trees or in the streams that create the unique ecosystems which operate their own tickets or codependent groups of species. We may see a lot of kangaroos in Nillumbik, but not notice the decline in wallabies and now almost the absence of koalas. The mammals in some areas. Birds, animals and reptiles all depend on a variety of ecosystems to sustain them, both for feed, nesting or breeding sites, and also shelter from predators. These systems have evolved over thousands of years to produce the diversity and independence of species that we see today. Restoring them once they are nature has got the recipe just right, and it's hard for us to replicate it once it has gone. However, there has been much revegetation throughout Nillumbik over the last 50 years. Some areas have recovered well and once again offer the varied ecosystems that may have historically existed. So these areas, together with others of remnant historical vegetation, are now available for us to protect. We have to remember that this is a statewide inquiry and that in some municipalities, they will be struggling to find ecosystems left locally that they can protect. Their focus will be on restoration. And as I said before, this is far more difficult and far more costly than protecting what we still have left to protect. I'd like to thank officers as well as members of our Environment and Sustainability Committee that worked on the submission that I'm asking Council to endorse this evening. It's a realistic document that describes the threats to our ecosystems from climate change, bushfire, invasive animals and weeds, as well as urban development. It acknowledges that the majority of land and therefore ecosystems in Nillumbik are in private ownership. It looks at opportunities to work with First Peoples on such things as fire stick land management and restoration of vegetation. It articulates the need to protect ecosystems while being mindful of mitigating fuel loads. It highlights 5 successful case studies that have occurred in Nillumbik. We need to stop viewing our ecosystems as green infrastructure that is actually valuable, not just to us, but the wider community and to Melbourne and Australia. This submission requests ongoing government funding that supports local council initiatives, promotes opportunities to work with private landholders as well as other stakeholders, and continues to endorse public education and engagement with regard to maintaining and improving a wide variety of ecosystems throughout the Shire. So I wholeheartedly support that we adopt this paper tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a very important piece of work that the officers and the committee have put together. I fully support it. I think it identifies that we are part of the Green Wedge, and it really supports that. And for that, I am actually supporting this document going forward. Thank you.
Other councillors? Councillor Brooker.
Thank you. Look, I think in broad terms, this is very important that Nillumbik are active in this area, and that we're seen to be active. And so we're putting through this submission into the inquiry into biodiversity, or as it's titled, the ecosystem decline in Victoria. Councillor Dumerick, I think, has a phrase I like about, you have to participate in these events to be counted. And that's why it's important that we make the contribution we do. If you do love an appendix, the material in the appendix here provides a lot of very specific information about tree loss in Nillumbik, 98 hectares over the last 5 years, and the various projects that may have contributed to that. I can only account for the plenty, I think was 8 hectares of that amount. 10% would, you'd attribute to Yanyun Road. You couldn't imagine where else that would come from. But it's a lot of information there. The case studies are excellent. The Eltham copper butterfly, shows or demonstrates with some active management what could be achieved there. So, to members of the community who follow this thing, I think the scholarship in this report is actually commensurate to the funding that we're getting from various bodies of the state government for rivers to ranges, and I'm not sure what the deer control project is called, and various other things. So I think it is worthwhile for Nillumbik in particular to be making this type of contribution at the quality that is being made. That's all. Thank you.
Peter, you need to take yourself off mute.
Sorry, I'm muted. I said if there's no other speakers, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Now move to Committee of Management of Crown Land at Watkin Street, Diamond Creek. Councillor Perkins.
I move the officer recommendation.
Moving that, seconded. Seconded. Councillor Dumerick. You wish to speak?
Just very quickly, if I could. Look, and really just by way of to acknowledge Ken Rampton in particular, is an older gentleman, part of a local group called Omni, or Older Men New Ideas. That group came to be some 6 years ago with a concept to build a labyrinth in Diamond Creek. Long before the Diamond Creek Regional Playground was really even envisaged, but the idea of a labyrinth is a quite meditative space for people to walk and get to the centre and sit down and have a bit of a think. It's not a maze. I remember Ken, immediately anyone talks to him about a labyrinth, he'll go to great pains to explain that it's not a maze. There is no choice in terms of the direction that you go. You do end up in the middle though eventually, and you can see by the attachments, it's largely going around in circles and then end up in the centre. This labyrinth will enable 2 people to do it at the same time. It's disability compliant. It'll be a good thing for the area. It sort of helps to complete a path, which will basically be a health and wellbeing loop around through the regional playground, back past the labyrinth. There's a number of fitness stations that the local Lions have kindly installed, and we know that the regional playground and the tram that Rotary are finishing off now would be a great addition to the whole area. What this motion does is puts that land, which is not owned by us but owned by DELP, puts it in our control, and should fast track the process by which we can build the labyrinth and maintain the land into the future. So it's great to see this finally come to fruition. I know that Ken has been quite ill of late, and he'll be hopefully be able to see this thing constructed, which should be the next few months. So it's a great thing. I'm sure that the Diamond Creek community will welcome it, and like to thank officers, particularly Paul Yusitov, who's been the project manager for the regional playground, and he's incorporated this as part of it, and he's done a fantastic job. So it's great that we've got to this point. Thank you.
Does the seconder wish to speak? Councillor Ashton. Councillor Ashton.
I'm really excited that we're getting a labyrinth in Nillumbik. These are really spiritual, and they're often you come across them in New South Wales, but we do have a lot of people here that practice yoga and alternative meditation techniques, and I think this is a really exciting thing to come to Diamond Creek, and yeah, I think it's a great initiative.
Any speakers against? If not, I'll put the resolution. Does sound like good governance to me, going around in circles and ending up in the middle. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. We'll move on to the next item, which is proposed road discontinuance, 50 Kangaroo Ground, St Andrews Kangaroo Ground. Councillor Ashton, you wish to move this. Seconded, Councillor Dumerick. Councillor Ashton.
Look, as per the recommendation, we received a planning application from the KG CFA some months ago. They've got a bit of space at the back. They got a grant for a pagoda, and they were going to put in a barbecue in a sort of community area, only to find that we hadn't. This is one of those gazetting issues where we just hadn't. It's a bit of land that's been there forever and hadn't been sort of put properly under council's domain. So yeah, really very supportive of this. The sooner the better. So yeah, I fully support the recommendation.
Councillor Dumerick, do you wish to speak? No. Are there any speakers against? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, against, that is carried. Rockcliffe Street Special Charge Scheme, given I'm in the chair, Councillor Dumerick, do you mind moving this? Happy to, I think he said. That's seconded by Councillor Rankin. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Dumerick?
I don't really have a lot to say on this one. It is a under our special charges scheme, is going to has been widely supported, and will continue on. Thank you.
As the ward councillor, I absolutely support your commentary. Thank you. Any other speakers? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour, against, that is carried. Debt collection policy, Councillor Rankin.
Sorry, through the chair. Sorry, Councillor Clark. We're just wanting to make sure we moved Officer Report OCM 13820, the Fredericks Road Special Charge Scheme.
All right, I jumped that one, did I? I was getting a bit excited. Sorry about that. Apologies. Councillor Brooker.
If I can slow things down somewhat. The Fredericks Road Special Charge Scheme. Look, I think residents would always like these matters. I'm going to read it out. Okay, I'm not going to read it all out, but it's just to declare a special charge scheme for the Fredericks Road.
You're happy to second it, Councillor Dumerick? Councillor Brooker.
Yeah, look, residents would always like these things to proceed quicker than what they do. We do have to follow a statutory process. We're now almost at the end of that with a notice of intention to declare, which means people have a chance to object, and then property owners have a right of appeal to VCAT kind of at the end of that process. My point is this process, which is taken up to this point, I think takes us into 2021. It doesn't seem to me that we can get a tender out, approved, and then the construction done by the end of the summer, or the approaching summer. We will have to see. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Jemmerick. The no other speakers against, I'll put the resolution. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jemmerick, wish to speak?
I was just going to, I don't necessarily agree with Councillor Brooker's pessimism. I think we could get it going, but
Now we've got some optimists amongst us. Let's hope we get on with it and life returns to a bit more normality. Anyway, all those in favour? Against, that is carried. Sorry, but jumping the order. Debt collection policy rates and charges, Councillor Rankin, you're moving that?
Yes, I am.
In accordance with the officer recommendation. That's seconded. Councillor Perkins. Thank you. Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Mayor or Deputy Mayor. Like to just acknowledge again that this item is part of the new Local Government Act 2020 that's come into play again. Vince and the team in the finance have done a terrific job. We talked about this item back in April, I think it was, at the beginning of COVID. There is a temporary suspension on debt collecting at the moment. It is also noted that it will be coming back up for discussion again next month for the council group as to whether we consider the extension of the COVID component of the debt collection policy into the future. So look forward to perhaps discussing that next month, but it's as per the papers and as per the recommendation. Thank you.
Sounds like a very good idea to have those tests if you've got any sense of a sniffle so that we don't have to worry about debt collection. Go and get those tests done. Councillor Perkins, do you wish to speak? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour, against, that is carried. Move to Audit and Risk Committee. Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, as per the papers again.
Seconded, Councillor Ashton. Thank you.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, sorry, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself there. It's usually addressed the Mayor that's sitting in the chair. Look, just a couple of points I'd like to raise. The Audit and Risk Committee commended and noted the excellent work, the presentation and the speed of giving the numbers through from this council to the Audit and Risk Committee, particularly for the budget. The other councils had not even got to this point as yet. So as a collective group and officers, the chair and the independent members of the Audit and Risk Committee certainly noted the good work and the speed and presentation of our documents. Also to go so far as saying that I can't remember whether it was the chair or one of the independent members, noted particularly about the volunteering within our community, that it's extremely good practice, and they've noted the amount of immense volunteering within our community. Moving around to other councils, it had been noted that 24% of the Nillumbik community participates in some form of volunteering. So if you translate that to a dollar effect, our community is one of the best performing communities ever in the way of volunteering. The transformation project, again, that the team that falls under Vince are just doing an amazing job. And again, the Audit and Risk Committee acknowledged that, and it's a job well done, and it's a great effort considering the times that we're in. We've expedited a huge amount of the project very quickly, as others have done, and I think it's been done extremely well, as the Audit and Risk Committee independent members and chair did note. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Ashton? No. Any other speakers? No. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour? Against, that is carried. We'll move to the annual financial report. Councillor Rankin.
We're getting along a lot of work tonight. Chair of Finance and Governance, the annual financial report as per the papers again. Thank you.
Seconded. Councillor Brooker. Councillor Rankin.
Sorry, I've just lost my notes in regards to that one. The financial The financial report, again, the compliance standards with regards to the Australian standard accounting practices have been changed and altered, and there's now a new technical process which largely impacts how we recognise our grant income, revision of the landfill rehabilitation costs as well. Just a couple of other items that I might note in here as well. This is the last annual financial report coming to council before the elections, and I think I would just like to pass comment and summarise the journey that we've been on in the last 4 years as a collective group. And I think we need to all note it, and it's a job well done. A minimum of 9 new pavilions that have been built in our journey, costing in excess of $16 million, and that's excluding the Eltham Leisure Centre, where council has contributed 8 million of those, and there's been a significant large contribution by both state and federal government. The rates, as Councillor Clark highlighted earlier this evening, we're the only council that had 2 0% rate increases in our term. And over the rest of the journey, we had a 1.95 and a 2.25. So both of those are well and truly below the rate cap, or certainly below the rate cap. So we've really performed extremely well from a financial point of view. We've gone down the journey of the Hurstbridge Trail. We are well on the way of that project. The rural councillors, particularly Councillor Egan and Councillor Ashton, will certainly talk more about that. That's been a tremendous project and is very well received. We came into our term with a debt of approximately 14.8 million. We've now got a debt, or council now has a debt of only 6.7 million, including our debt reserve. So it's quite a significant reduction, more than half, considering we've also spent a considerable amount in sporting pavilions and female participation, as well as regional play spaces. Our transformation project that we put in place not so long ago, of in excess of $3 million, that's been certainly expedited very quickly over the last 6 months, particularly with the COVID pandemic that has come in. And again, acknowledgement to the team in getting that through and pushing it out so quickly. With regards to the staffing within the organisation, they really haven't flexed up or flexed down. We're still remaining at a stable level. So whilst we've spent this money and we've saved the money, we've still got a good group of people within the organisation. The culture has certainly shifted and improved dramatically, particularly under the leadership and the EMT team, and certainly giving council a very good platform to work with the ratepayers. The service levels across the organisation have also increased dramatically, and whilst some may say some of those independent surveys say that over the journey they may not be quite right, our customer satisfaction survey that is linked to our customer first strategy is an outstanding piece of work that the team have done. And I think those numbers speak for themselves, that overall our ratepayers and our residents are extremely satisfied with the service levels within the organisation. So for the final annual financial report coming to this council, I think over the journey as a collective group, there has been some really good work. Whilst Councillor Perkins highlighted earlier that there were some not so good decisions, I think from a financial perspective, we would all agree that we're in a great spot moving forward. and particularly with the leadership within the organisation. So well done to all. Thank you.
Councillor Rankin. Councillor Brooker. No wish to speak. Any other speakers? If not, I'll put Councillor Brooker. You better be quick.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I just wanted to make a reference to the operational deficit we've got here, because that may be an issue that some people would like some information on. If you look at the capital grants area, that is the big area that's gone down from where are the numbers? 14 to $2 million. So, and that is a result of, as you know, we've talked about accounting standards, but that is really a function of income that isn't spent, hasn't been recorded as income as it was in 1919. It's now recorded as an asset. So that is the reason why the 2020 figure, there's such a big difference between 14,325 and 2,898, and that is the reason for the difference in the deficit. Okay, so what it means is that the income received from capital grants that isn't spent is not recorded as income, which it used to be. It's in the balance sheet. So that would account for that. Look, I just want to flag, I'm not sure if, and this was actually a question, I think, in the question part of the meeting, in terms of, I wouldn't say a red flag, but certainly something we need to be concerned about, and that is the non-current liabilities in the balance sheet, where there's a provision has gone up from 6.6 million to 22.388. Now that's all to do with the future liability that this council, not this council, but a future council is going to have to deal with as regards the landfill levy. The landfill is going to be far more expensive to cap at Plenty and Kangaroo Ground than what has previously been anticipated and budgeted for. So that provision in the non-current liabilities is flagging that that is a future liability that the council will have to address. So I'm not 100% sure that we're in great shape. I think that is a looming tsunami above us that is going to have to be dealt with one way or another. And it's going to be difficult to deal with, because that's a massive difference in your non-current liabilities from 6 to 22. So that's all I've got to say. It was raised as one of the questions preceding the meeting. So that's a little bit more context. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor, I presume you are speaking in favour of the motion nonetheless. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Clark, we could barely hear you there.
All right, is that any better? Don't know what happened there. All of a sudden, my
increase it a little bit more.
Don't know what's happening. Anyway, I'll try again. So you're up again. Don't know what happened. Sorry about that. What I was saying was, Councillor Brooker, I'm assuming you're speaking in favour of the resolution. Yes. Councillor Ashton.
Through the chair, can I speak to our financial director, please? A question.
Still with us? Only 9:51.
I want to talk to him about the non-current liabilities, the issue that Councillor Brooker has raised, and talk to him with regard to, you know, why potentially have we changed our accounting practices, and is this the tsunami that our sometimes pessimistic Councillor Brooker might assume is going to occur, or you know, I've been led to believe as a councillor that we're in a good state of financial health.
So, Councillor Ashton, if I can just get perhaps the answer to the question is, are we facing the tsunami, and have we had a change of accounting standard?
And if so, why?
If I may, through the chair, good evening, everyone. There has been changes in accounting standards. So picking up off the first point around the recognition of grant income, a change in the accounting standard has now required council to record grant income when it is spent. Hence the drop in income in the profit and loss statement, which is driving the large deficit. With regard to the non-current liability, yes, we have recorded an increase and also 30-year aftercare costs for both rehabilitation sites, being Kangaroo Ground and Plenty. Now, I wouldn't say that these are big numbers, but they're not impending immediately on council. They can be spread across years, so it's not what I would refer to as a tsunami of liabilities, but more a sustainable approach as to how to manage these costs moving forward, and in consultation with all relevant authorities, being in this case the EPA.
Thank you, Vince. Jane, Councillor Ashton, have you got any further speech? No?
No, that's okay. I'm not going to rush away from the coast.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour, against, that is against. Favour, yes. Against, that's carried. Thank you. We now move to. Sorry, I moved all my papers so that my speaker wasn't set. We're up to Yarra Ranges Tourism Partnership Report 2019-2020. Councillor Ashton. Wish to move the report in accordance with the resolution in the papers?
Yes, please, as per the papers.
Seconded, Councillor Perkins. Thank you, Councillor Ashton.
Excellent. So, look, this partnership has been incredibly successful. It's made us part of a very successful regional group. We're sort of the needle in the haystack a bit here. We're small and we're different, and we're proud of that. But to be part of the Yarra Ranges Tourism Group has opened up a whole new aspect, particularly about campaigning for us. So now we have dedicated marketing campaigns and public relations activities. During the COVID lockdown, and this is what I've been most impressed with, that there's not a day that goes by that our businesses, and I get included in those emails, receive something from the Yarra Ranges Tourism Association, and they have made an absolute concerted effort to continue to support all our businesses, particularly those in rural areas, and they've helped them establish online marketing and other opportunities. And I think in these times particularly, it is good when people feel that they've not only got the support of council, but they have got the support of the tourism experts. 28 Nillumbik businesses are now financially engaged with Yarra Ranges Tourism, and they have been promoting, specialist arts, Sunday outings, and also even our golf course is promoted in their material, benefiting definitely the people in Yarrambat. Visitor information carousels. These have been raised regularly in rural areas and places like Hurstbridge and Diamond Creek, and now we have those, and we are not responsible for them, which is good. So I think, in a way, it's $70,000 a year. It frees our officers up to do other work at promoting our business to a wider audience is now done by the Yarra Ranges Tourism Group. So although this year the number of forums and events have been postponed, the groundwork is well established, and we're particularly looking forward to our local businesses seeing the fruits of their labours and committing to be part of the Yarra Ranges Tourism Partnership for another 3 years. Will make the most of our very captive tourist market over the next 2 years. So, yeah, I heartily recommend that extending our support of this group, or our commitment to this group, for another 3 years. So, yes, thank you.
Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, look, certainly support Councillor Ashton and this motion. It's a good partnership with Yarra Ranges Tourism. Whilst I don't really believe that at this stage, Nillumbik has got a great tourism profile or too much to offer. In partnership with the Yarra Ranges, we certainly have. As part of the broader region, I see that's where we fit. I certainly know for Diamond Creek, it lends itself to being the gateway to the Yarra Ranges. that really that's where people are going to stop on the way to the Yarra Ranges. You know, they might be going to winery, they might stop for lunch. You know, collect some local wine at Nillumbik Cellars. You know, move on to the Golden Hills Brewery, microbrewery in Station Street there. But you know, it's good for business. It's good for business in the activity centre. You know, if it leads on to some fantastic tourism opportunities in the Green Wedge parts of the Shire, we'll wait and see. But certainly, what we do currently have is 3 activity centres in Hurstridge, Diamond Creek, and Eltham. And I think the Yarra Ranges Tourism Partnership works very, very well with that. So, you know, I just know the digital kiosk, for instance, you know, there's 2 of them in Diamond Creek. So certainly for the area that I represent, they've got very good value out of that. There's one at the new rotary tram being installed, and they're $48,000 each. There's another one in Diamond Street. So, yeah, happy to support the 3-year commitment there. Thank you.
Are there any speakers against? If not, I'll put the resolution. All in favour, against, that is carried. We now move to the Positive Ageing Advisory Committee Terms of Reference and Membership. Councillor Brooker, do you wish to move that? Seconded. Councillor Ashton, wish to speak? Councillors?
I do.
Councillor Brooker.
Just the recommendation on the screen. Just a couple of things. We have the application form and the weighting assigned here for each question that is in the papers. So I think the officer in charge, Fiona Vong, has really internalised this transparency doctrine that we've been talking about earlier this evening and put all that into the documents so people who apply to be on the committee can see how much weight is provided to each question. There have been several retirements from the committee, so a process of renewal, you know, has begun through this process and the terms of reference. We've targeted some user groups at Healthability, various council websites, social media channels will be used, and look out for the nomination form in the Nillumbik News, if that is your inclination, if you're watching tonight. We recently actually had a great session, just broadly the Positive Ageing Committee with the place activation officers, and we did a particular program about why people enjoy living in Nillumbik, and it was, I think, illuminating to those officers to hear, you know, the reasons and the photographs the committee sent into them that valued things, you know, open space, nature, environment, having a connected kind of community in their neighbourhood, were all the things that came up from that committee. And hopefully that will be some learning from the place activation people to take into their work and what they do in activating places in Nillumbik. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Ashton.
I'd like to congratulate Councillor Brooker. You know, this is a good committee. This council saw this committee move from just being a reference group to an advisory committee, and that change in the status was very important with regard to having their minutes come before council, and also the weight that we gave to their actions. So this is a good committee. We'll all be on this committee one day, hopefully, and you know, I just love the input that we get from people of my age and older in big here with the University of Thursday Age, Living and Learning Centres, all the festivals, everything else. It's a really great committee, inclusivity, everything. It's a fun committee, dynamic, and it's everything that we should be proud of. So well done, Councillor Brooker, and a big tick to this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Are there any speakers against? If not, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour? Against, that is carried. We now move to a range of procedural items. Can I suggest to you, councillors, we could move on block, Councillor Rankin, items number 145, 146, 147, 148, 149, 150, 151, 152, 153, 154. And if any councillors wish to speak to those resolutions, we shall be generous. Is there a seconder from Councillor Brooker? Councillor Rankin, do you wish to speak to any of the items?
Did you want to include 155 as well?
No, I didn't. We wanted to do that separately.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I will just quickly speak on the the quarterly risk and safety report. Again, these are reports that the team have done quite vigilant in what they've done and how they present them. The reporting is certainly a lot better and more proactive from where we've come, and the committee takes the safety the organisation takes the safety within our teams very seriously. And I think whilst we may not have seen significant reductions in injuries from an OH&S perspective, I think there's been some very good work done by Craig, particularly from a reporting point of view, but every team leader within the organisation and every team member within the organisation needs to be very much commended in making sure that safety is a number one priority when they're out there doing their daily tasks. So good work to the team, good work to the team leaders and every department. I think safety is a very important part of our daily routine, and I commend it. Thank you.
Councillor Brooker.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, look, I wanted to speak on the tender for the Diamond Valley Sports and Fitness Centre. This is quite a moment for this council, in my view. This is, you've heard me talk about this before, but it is a 40-year-old building that culminates tonight, finally, definitively, and definitely overdue, that we are letting a tender for the redevelopment of that facility. Now, I think I'm right in saying it's going to be like the second maybe the second largest construction project in the history of the Shire, behind the Eltham Leisure Centre. So it is a significant project for Nillumbik. It's been a long journey to get to this point. I just wanted to chart some of the hurdles we've had to overcome, some of the missteps as well that we've taken, and some of the critical moments. But it all started actually with the ODM report, which I thought I had here somewhere to hold up, but it's somewhere, which was the Indoor Sports Regional Needs Analysis. And that was a document that said we needed an extra 4 courts to meet current and future demand in the Shire of Nillumbik. We know we've got a very good, very large basketball cohort in our Shire, but we also have table tennis, squash, netball, badminton, and so on played at that centre. The master plan was delivered in 2018. That was just prescient or maybe inspired timing for the 2018 state election, because at that election, through the advocacy of the Strategic Advisory Group, we obtained an $8 million commitment from the state member from Eltham. If Labor were to win that election, that $8 million would be coming for the redevelopment. Well, that happened, and so then what was to be a $6.5 million program that was really going to be a renewal, but not an expansion of courts. It was the $8 million commitment that enabled now a 3-court expansion of the facility. So what we have now is a detailed, we had to go through from master plan to detailed design. There were problems in terms of the concept plan encroached upon the road reserve at Greensboro Highway. That took 9 months to kind of overcome, various letters to Vic Roads in terms of asking them to, could we encroach on their road reserve? No, we couldn't. They said they needed it for, I'm not sure, Northeast Link, although that was out of scope. I'm being given some extra latitude, Councillor Clark.
You are. But
okay, thank you.
I do remind you that this is so close to your heart, it could go for half an hour, but I reckon...
I think that's probably true. I'll just just for a moment. So that took a lot of negotiation around getting that right. We then, we've appointed project managers. We've now going to the extent tonight of putting, the tender and the builder to build the facility. There will be, I'm sure, some problems along the way that we may discover. But the important thing is we've got a program that we can deliver within the allocated budget. So here it is, councillors. After a process of 3 years, I should have said we have started. We have the disability lift I've talked about previously. That's there to finally address some access issues more broadly in the centre. But now, the main game starts. Some preparatory work has been done. The house next door has been demolished. So, we are going to be ready to go once the tender is let on the 10th of September. Thank you.
Excitement charged and ready to go. Bulldozers are at the ready. Are there other speakers? Councillor Jimrick, do you want to wax lyrical about the Eltham Sports Community Family Tennis Extension? No?
I'd be happy to wax lyrical about the Eltham Central Reserve Pavilion, the numerous Diamond Creek Trail construction plans, but given the time, I'll probably do that another day.
Well done. A very good man. Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, look, I suppose I'll just talk briefly and follow up on what Councillor Brooker said, where the numbers are in front of us there in terms of the contribution by the state government for the Diamond Valley Sports and Fitness Centre construction works. We know of a $16.5 million project. It's funded 2/3 by the state government. $2.5 million from DUB, Growing Suburbs Fund, another $8 million from SRV local sports grant. So, council has contributed as well, to be fair, but we're a minor partner in terms of the funding ratio, coming in at $6 million. We've put in 36%, and the state government have put in the rest. So I'd just like to join Councillor Brooke, and I'm sure all councillors in really paying homage to the Andrews Labor government and the ongoing work that they've done through their adjuncts, who are Vicky Ward, the member for Eltham, and also Danielle Green for Yanyan. This is one of many, many capital works. Certainly council couldn't have achieved anywhere near its capital works project or program without the support of those two very strong female members of parliament. So this is just one of many works, and when we do award tenders, we let the tennis court extension in Eltham, that's another one. The trail, none of these things happen without the support of our local state government members. So and indeed the Premier himself, Dan Andrews. Thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers? There being none, I'll put the resolution. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Item 15520, Chief Executive Employment Matters Committee. Councillor Rankin, seconded Councillor Brooker. Is there any discussion on this matter? I don't think we can really have any discussion on this matter. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. We now move to notices of motion. We have a notice of motion regarding the Lexus 2020 Melbourne Cup Tour in the name of Councillor Brooker. Councillor Brooker. You need to unmute yourself first.
If I can just go to that before I start.
Moving it.
I would just say, it's up to the council. It makes slightly more logical sense if number 5 and number 6 were put in the other way round. But if people just kind of, maybe when they're reading the document, they read 1, 2, 3, 4, read 6, and then read 5.
Can we get it on the screen? Because I want to be able to look at it.
Okay. Can we?
Right.
Okay.
There it is.
All right. Maybe if it's the notice of motion, maybe I should read through it. And what it says is this, that council notes the Lexus Melbourne Cup Tour is sponsored by Lexus and supported by ABC Bullion and the TAB. 2, condemns participation in a sweepstake that is not consistent with the Nillumbik Shire Council Health and Wellbeing Plan 2017 to 21. Specifically, page 33, clause 15, implement strategic approaches that change alcohol, drugs and gambling culture. 3, condemns participation in a sweepstake that is not consistent with the Nillumbik Shire Gambling Harm Minimisation Policy 2000, and it says 2106 as a typo, to 2021. Specifically, the policy statement that reads in part 12, Council will maintain independence from the gambling industry. 4, notes that the Nillumbik Shire Council Gambling Harm Minimisation Policy advocates for a public health approach to gambling through examining social risk factors, e.g. the normalisation of gambling as entertainment and the impact on community cohesion. 5, reviews its decision to participate, it should read, in the Lexus 2020 Melbourne Cup Tour. And 5, requests a report at the September FNC on the process for selecting a charity where $50,000 will be awarded for a local community initiative should the Nillumbik entry win the event, noting the deadline for this selection is September 1.
Councillor, can I just ask you the question before I go for a seconder? In that, what is number 6 on the papers as printed, you say reviews its decision.
Yes.
Is your intention to simply indicate that we withdraw?
It may be. I want to review the decision. I think councillors need to have another discussion about it, and they may decide to review, they may decide to withdraw, they may decide to double down. Not to use a gambling pun, but yes, it's a review. To review the process that led to the decision, to review the decision.
We're not up to the speech yet, Councillor Brooker. We got a second.
Oh.
We have a seconder in Councillor Perkins. Or you got a question? Seconder? Yes.
I've got a question through the chair. Brooker, am I allowed to ask a question through governance? Am I allowed to ask the question as a motion? Am I allowed to ask the author of the motion a question?
Yes.
I am? Okay, thank you. 2 questions I have, Councillor Brooker. Firstly, your interpretation of a sweepstake. Can you just clarify that for me, please?
So,
well, Councillor Clark, were you about to ask something?
What I was going to suggest was maybe it's appropriate to hear your speech as the mover, because that may even deal with the issues that Councillor Rankin wants answered. So maybe if we can just go to the speech of Councillor Brooker, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Rankin, if you've got any clarification and a question.
Okay.
Okay. This without.
Please, thank you.
Okay. This was given to councillors with 24 hours, I think, notice of participation, this particular event, the Lexus Melbourne Cup Tour. There are a lot of conditions that surrounded it that I don't believe was fully communicated to council within that time frame. But notwithstanding any of the process type issues that I think exist, and I concede that we're in a period of just, COVID-19. Normal processes are very difficult to follow. Everyone's working from home. It is really a very different sort of workplace. But to go into the substantiveness of the issue, a sweepstake is an event where everyone is familiar with. I am a person who's participated in many sweepstakes. I think everyone knows what a sweepstake is. Now, this particular sweepstake is broadcast on Channel 10. The various entrants are drawn out and announced. Nillumbik Shire Council will be part of that announcement from Channel 10, and Channel 10 will drive the whole process, as will the Victorian Racing Club, because it is their event. But that is the point, is that, you know, participating in that event is not at all consistent with the motion that I have put down. And that is not to say that one wants to be anti this, you know, most historic, iconic Australian event. But as an individual, we can support it, we can attend it, we can bet on it. That is not what our responsibility is as a governance organisation, and specifically a governance organisation that has policies around harm minimisation, that has policies around gambling specifically, and has policies about, you know, the fact that of culture. Culture is the normalisation of gambling as entertainment. And if the council participates in an event like that, is it not, it's not actually having a strategy discouraging the normalisation of gambling. It is doing the opposite of that. So, you know, normally council's activities in this space are around the planning activities around electronic gaming machines. But within those policies, as this motion said, it said, you know, council will maintain independence from the gambling industry. Well, is that real? Is that real? Do we want to just say it, or do we actually want to act out and do it? Because talk is pretty cheap. It is your actions, I think, that drive these things. So you can have all sorts of anti-gambling policies. You can, you know, take this moral high road of anti-gambling and you know, and ride that particular horse. But I think it really comes to your actions. What are your actions going to be consistent with those noble intentions in this policy? That we maintain independence from the gambling industry, that we adopt strategic approaches that change culture. How do you change culture? By participation in a gambling event like a sweepstake, albeit associated with Australia's most iconic race. I mean, it doesn't make much sense. And if it did, and we've talked about the delegation tonight that officers have of the CEO and so on, why didn't the council officers just participate in it? Why did they even go to us seeking our opinion? They did that because they thought, gee, in the back of their mind somewhere, gee, there's something, you know, we really want to cover this off with councillors. There's something not quite right here. So they went to councillors with 24 hours notice and said, can you support or not support it? And I don't think sufficient thought or scrutiny of the event and how it works was provided.
Thank you, Councillor Booker. Councillor Perkins, I'll come to you, Councillor Rankin, after Councillor Perkins is the seconder.
Look, I support the motion put by Councillor Booker, because I'm concerned with this one as well. This has been a most unusual process. It came out of the blue for councillors. We had 24 hours to indicate a preference of go ahead or put the brakes on. The expression of interest had been lodged some months earlier. I think we found out about this a couple of weeks ago, but the expression of interest lodged by officers was put in about April. You know, a time period of a number of months where, you know, there should have been some sort of briefing or some sort of heads up to the council group that this is where we were heading. We were told that the executive management team of council were across it. When I spoke to the executive manager of communities, she was not aware of it. You know, expressed my concerns about, you know, what does this do for you know, people currently in lockdown who are dealing with all sorts of pressures, be that financial, mental health, drugs, gambling, alcohol. Let's just say it's not necessarily a good look. We need to put our personal view aside from, you know, personally, if we might take part in a sweepstakes or put a bet on the cup as an individual or as a councillor, I have no answer. I've no answer to it. That's fine. Nothing to do with me. But the fiduciary duty of council as a group, we're local government. We need not be supporting the gambling industry, be that horse racing, dog racing, cat racing, pig racing, whatever it is. The TOB, this is a gambling. This is a gambling thing. We've got harm minimisation policy. We've got very strict guidance in terms of policy. And when it was first put to me, that was my gut reaction. Within minutes of receiving the email notifying that I had to make a decision within hours, it was that it really should have already been assessed against our existing policies before it even came to council, and really before an expression of interest was even lodged. Well-meaning councillors or well-meaning officers, I'm not too critical of them, but they're almost siloed sometimes in their own department. So if you've got a job to encourage tourism and economic development, in its own right, you would probably not see that there could be some issues in going down the track that we've gone down. The governance controls around this, where we've actually called for a vote amongst councillors via email, and then when you raise something in a council briefing, we're told the decisions have to be made in the chamber. So I've got a number of issues. If this motion was to get up, and I doubt it will, but if it does, I'd be very interested in see that review and how council can tackle this sort of issue better into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Perkins. Councillor Rankin, did you wish to ask a question at this point?
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Just, Councillor Brooker, you talk and
question, or are you speaking?
Sorry?
With a question?
I do. So item number 2 on there, you condemn the participation in a sweepstake. Do you have to have money on a sweepstake?
Councillor Brooker.
Am I allowed to answer that question? Because how long do I get to speak?
Well, it's a question. It's either a yes or no.
Well, no. How long do I get to speak? If Councillor Rankin wants to ask questions, how long do I get to answer them?
Can I, Councillor Brooker, to assist you, can I suggest, Councillor Rankin, that you speak and make your points, and Councillor Brooker covers it off in a right of reply. Councillor Rankin. Just
before I go into that and the clock starts, might I recommend that we get a time extension first? It's now 10:26.
I was going to do that, but you've got 3 minutes, so I've got 1 minute after that, so off you go.
All righty, thank you. So just very quickly, there's the notice of motion I think it's going against itself. Number 2 talks about condones participation in a sweepstake. As a council, I don't see that we're actually putting anything up. So it's not costing council any money to participate in this so-called sweepstake. I think the potential winnings where you've got down in point 5 requests a report at the September FNC on the process for selecting a charity. So dot point 2, you're saying you don't want to do it, but dot point 5, you're going, oh, well, if we do, how do we, and I sort of get that we need a policy for how does the 50,000 get chosen as to which charity it goes to. But it's sort of contradicting itself. But in short, I won't be supporting this notice of motion. I've been to 12 Melbourne Cups in a row, and I don't think, maybe I had 1 bet out of 12. So just because it's the Melbourne Cup, it doesn't mean that you're going into bet money. You can have a good time. You can go and enjoy the fashions on the field. You can enjoy lunch and some celebration with some friends and family. You don't need to gamble. Understand that there are people in the community that are challenged with that, and that we do have a harm minimisation policy, and I respect that. But I think there's an opportunity here that as a council, that there's potentially some goodwill going back into the community, and goodness knows we need that sort of goodwill at the moment to come into the community with COVID and try and increase some business and some eco dev around the area. And I think this is an opportunity that we could do that. But let me be clear that I don't believe that we're actually putting any money up, so it's not costing council anything apart from some time of officers to put the reports together. Thank you.
Further speakers, Councillor Ashton.
In a previous life, I worked for organisations that were offered money from tobacco and alcohol companies, and was part of our policy that we wouldn't accept that, mainly because of what we perceived. With regard to council, I was a very ardent supporter of our, gambling harm minimisation policy, and I remember I tried to lobby council at that time to increase our contribution to the allegiance against gambling. Now, I think our policy and our threat to our community has been sort of targeted mainly towards electronic gaming machines. And I think that they have been seen as probably the most potentially harmful to this community. And strategically, as a council, we have an opportunity to reduce the number of gaming machines in Nillumbik and also to support other councils that do that. So we get on to the Melbourne Cup. Now, the issue I have with the Melbourne Cup is that throughout Nillumbik, and particularly, I hate to say it, Councillor, in the rural areas, there are many clubs and venues that are owned by council that are used by groups on those days to hold events, usually barbecues, sweepstakes and the like. And I understand it's a dilemma to separate the Melbourne Cup from other forms of gambling and gambling harm. But I do believe that we actually, all governments have had a minister for racing. This Labor government is no different. The racing industry is an industry that brings much wealth to Victoria. However, I'm not a great supporter of gambling, but I do think in this instance, council isn't investing any money in this. We have the opportunity of very much promoting places like Montserrat, St Andrews, some of our tourist venues, and the worst case is we get a little bit of free publicity on Channel 10, and we may get a $50,000 grant that we can use. So in these times of COVID, if we were offered the Tour de France or the Hobart to Sydney yacht race, I don't think we'd be knocking those back. And they're all well-known events that people gamble on, as are most high-level sporting events. So in this instance, I'll support the recommendation as it is. Sorry, not your recommendation, Councillor Booker. I will just leave it to the officers to continue with working on this opportunity for Nillumbik.
Can I have a resolution to extend the meeting? Do we need a time frame, Blaga, or can we just have an extension?
Through the chair, no time frame, just an extension.
So it's moved Councillor Rankin, seconded Councillor Brooker. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. You weren't voting for it, CEO. I noticed that. So. As further speakers, there being no other speakers, can I just make the point myself? I know the Mayor did ask me and spoke to me earlier in the day or just before the meeting started. She was conscious she may not be able to get to the end of this meeting. Just wanted it for the record indicated that she doesn't support this particular resolution. From my own part, in short, just to be on the record, I don't see, pretty much as Councillor Rankin just outlined, that we're actually putting any wagering or creating a bet, if you like, in this regard. which is quite different. If we're contributing, say, $1,000 on the premise we might win, 50, then that's a whole different ball game. This is essentially a promotional opportunity for the Shire. Could provide a bit of fun. I don't think it goes to the heart about harm minimum, or it goes near actually our harm minimised policy strategy. I've got no problem with what that particular strategy is, but it is a simple and unique opportunity. We're in, because the tour comes to our Shire, the virtual tour comes to our Shire, we have the potential that one of the horses will be, I guess, given a number in our name, and then there's an outside chance we might win some money for a community group. As I understand it, officers are about to talk to where that money would go. We need to have submitted that back shortly to the VRC so that we know where that might play out, and I've got no problem with that proceeding. If there are no other speakers, I'll call on Councillor Booker. Sorry, Councillor.
Through the chair, could I ask a question as to where we're at in terms of selecting a charity? Before
you do that, Councillor Perkins had to call. Councillor Perkins.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I just had to look. I know we're not providing directly any financial. We're not laying down a bet insofar as along the lines that Councillor Clark and Councillor Rankin has suggested. But a question for the CEO in terms of, what is the cost likely to be of this venture? Like I understood there are some strings attached, and has there been any allocation set aside for it?
Another speech. It's just, are there any costs to this from the council?
I'm not aware through the chair of any costs associated with the promotion of this exercise at all.
Thank you. Councillor Booker, unless you've got a question, you've got a right of reply.
Well, the question is to the head of Department of Tourism and Marketing, which is Rosa, if she has selected a charity, and if so, who is it?
I know for a fact they haven't, and they're about to go out for community consultation. I asked that exact same question myself.
Okay. Well, the rules of the competition are you have to have it by the 1st of September. So they'll have to get it cracking on their community consultation, or they need to get a dispensation to the rules of the competition.
Let's decide where your resolution goes first. We've not made a decision.
Okay. Look, well, I haven't really heard any kind of robust defence, I have to say. There's nothing contradictory in the motion at all. Look, to say that, gambling takes place on council property, I don't think is a really strong kind of, there's all sorts of community groups use our property and probably run sweepstakes. That is a massive difference than the council participating in a sweepstake, than the St Andrew's Pony Club running a sweepstake. That's about as different as, the from here to Pluto kind of difference. The council is participating in a sweepstake. That is the issue here. Now, you talk about the normal point for council is to be a regulator of gambling, a regulator of electronic gaming machines. That is completely different than being a participant. Being a participant is completely different than being a regulator, and that is the problem here. We regulate gambling. We ought not be participating in a sweepstake, which goes to the normalisation of gambling culture, which this policy specifically says we ought not do. So really, why have these policies if we are not going to, through our actions, give some weight behind them? Through our actions, demonstrate that we actually think they're more than just words that make us sound good and feel good when we happen to pass them, that night at the council meeting. So we can say, hey, we're against gambling, we've got all this strong policy, but when it really comes to it, we will sacrifice that when it's convenient to do so.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, those in favour of the resolution of Councillor Brooker, notice of motion. Those against? 3-3. I'll use the casting vote. I've indicated where the mayor was going to be in any event, but I'll use my casting vote as against. A division. All those in favour? Councillor Brooker, Councillor Jemerick, Councillor Perkins. Those against? Councillor Clark, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Rankin, Councillor Ashton. With the casting vote of the Deputy Mayor, the matter is lost.
Could I ask the minute taker to record my very strong support for this motion?
Well, you can.
As per the governance rules.
I'm not sure. I mean,
thank you.
I'll take it on notice whether or not you can.
Well, you can, of course. It's in the governance rules.
Yes. Well,
would you like me to call it up for you? Or I
don't need your advice, Councillor Perkins. Thanks very much. As far as I know, you're not the governance officer.
But can we check with the governance officer?
Can I? If you'd like to just constrain yourself, constrain yourself, I'll ask the governance officer.
Oh, thank you,
Councillor Perkins. Well done. Governance Officer Bloger, I just wonder if you can clarify. I know you can certainly, if it's lost, if it's lost in that sense, that you may well be able to do it anyway. You might just be able to clarify whether Councillor Perkins can register that interest as he wishes to do so.
So we can register the councillor's dissent or opposition to an item and division of an item. I'd need to just confer to the local law in relation to whether we minute strong support for something. I have not seen that. I'm just going to double check, if you don't mind me, just looking into the local laws.
It's effectively dissent to the resolution of council.
So I can minute those words, yes.
Yeah.
If that's,
well, that's effectively what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's what I was seeking to clarify. And anyway, in any event, I'm sure if it can be accommodated, the governance officer will do exactly that for you.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else? No. Thank you. We'll then move. I don't think there is any other supplementary or urgent business. If not, I declare that the open meeting will close. We can have a resolution to go into the confidential meetings. Move Councillor Rankin, seconded Councillor Brooker. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. I thank the members of the community for their attendance. And in the words of our Premier, stay well. And if in doubt, go and get a test.